A few years ago, on a quiet night, Vincent kept hearing the faint sound of crying coming from the stable. At first, he thought it was some kind of wild animal, but when he carried his axe all the way to the place, Vincent was astonished to see a fair-skinned child with blonde hair, wrapped in a diaper, lying in the middle of the stable. He had a beautiful wife named Alina, but unfortunately, the couple suffered from infertility and could not have children. Years passed, and the child grew up with blonde hair and blue eyes, incredibly beautiful and adorable. The boy was named Shirone, who is our protagonist. Vincent and Alina always regarded him as their own son, their treasure. Every day when heading to the forest, Vincent took his son along. While he chopped wood, Shirone would be engrossed in reading the magic books that his father had bought for him. Their family was warm and happy like that, but the village children didn't really like Shirone. The reason was quite silly. He was always absorbed in reading books, and besides, he was skinny and delicate, almost like a girl. Nothing like Vincent's tall and strong appearance. The gossiping women in the village often whispered that Shirone was a child Vincent and his wife found somewhere unknown. The village children also knew this, so they stayed away from him even more. Although Shirone was indeed adopted, Vincent could not accept people talking badly about the child he considered his treasure. Although Shirone was indeed adopted, Vincent could not accept people talking badly about the child he considered his treasure. He always felt that Shirone's being distant from the village children was his fault. Of course, he couldn't just storm in and scold each kid, so to make up for his guilt, he often took his son on trips to broaden his horizons. The next morning, Vincent took his son to Chris City in the suburbs of the Kingdom of Tomia. This was Shirone's first time visiting a city. The luxury and hustle of the place dazzled him. Vincent still had some business to settle, so he stopped the carriage in front of a fruit shop owned by an acquaintance named Ma, then told his son to stay there until he came back. Although Shirone was usually very well behaved, because this was his first time in the city, Vincent kept reminding him repeatedly not to enter any shady alleys nor get involved with the nobles. Afterward, he drove the carriage away. Shirone stayed at the fruit stand, trying to prove his usefulness by writing a signboard to help Ma. He was quite surprised that a rural child like him could read, and moreover was intelligent and quick-witted. While Ma was admiring that beautiful child, Shirone curiously asked, "Mr. Ma, do you know magic?" "What, the law? No magic." Ma laughed. Kids are still kids after all. Every one of them likes grand things like dragons, heroes, and wizards. But seeing Shirone's sparkling, hopeful eyes, he couldn't bear to disappoint him, so he pointed toward the alley ahead. "I don't know much about magic, but over there are plenty of books about it." Shirone followed the direction of the finger, and his eyes immediately lit up. Behind the alley was a large bookstore. With the devil's permission, he ran eagerly toward it. However, upon entering the store, Shirone was rudely stopped by the proprietress. She refused to let him touch the books on the shelves, giving the reason, "These expensive books are not for poor people like you." Just then, the bookstore received a distinguished guest. The shopkeeper referred to him as the head steward, though it was unclear which prestigious family he belonged to. While the proprietress was busy attending to the guest, Shirone quickly flipped through some books on the shelf and found the content uninteresting. He wearily left the store, just as he happened to see a man carrying a box of books walking past. Being a book lover, Shirone impulsively ran after him. But what shocked him was that the man straightforwardly dumped the entire box of books into a trash heap. So this was where his father got books for him. Shirone stood dumbfounded for a few seconds, then approached the trash pile and carefully picked up each book to look through. At that moment, some laughter and voices echoed nearby. He turned around and saw two noble girls happily chatting, each holding a book in her hand. Shirone was extremely curious. He wondered how he was different from them. Why had his father once warned him not to clash with the nobles? Why were they free to read the books they loved while he was not? Thinking of this, Shirone unconsciously followed the two girls. But before he could catch up, a tall guard soldier stopped him. "Hey kid, this isn't a place for kids like you to be wandering around. Beyond this gate is an area reserved exclusively for nobles. Where are your parents?" My father is nearby," Shirone replied awkwardly. At that moment, another soldier approached. Just a glance and he found Shirone suspicious, since he didn't look like the children living around here. They immediately assumed Shirone was either an orphan or an accomplice of thieves. Therefore, the soldiers wanted to drag him away for questioning. But Shirone was quick as lightning, slipped off his outer jacket and escaped. He hid behind some bushes, hair disheveled, clothes dirtied, but still felt lucky for not being caught. As he was about to pick up his shoe and return to Mr. Ma's place, Shirone suddenly heard voices coming from behind the large outer wall. "So now we will discuss the topic. What is magic? Headmaster, please show us a fire-spitting spell." A few excited laughs echoed. Scion raised his head to look at the wall that was twice, even 3 times his height, but of course saw nothing. But then he was stunned. Wait, could this be the Magic Academy? The excitement inside him rose strongly. So Scion pressed his ear against the wall and listened attentively. Inside this room, the person called the principal was continuing to ask questions to his students. He asked, "What is the most important thing when learning magic?" Some said knowledge, some said diligence, others believed the most important thing was money. Yet no one had answered correctly. Scion tried to listen carefully and finally received the answer from the principal. The most important thing when studying magic is clarity. The group of noble-born students inside, roughly his age, all looked confused when the principal mentioned clarity. "What is clarity?" one student asked. The principal did not rush to answer. Instead, he asked back, "Is there anyone here who does not know what 1 + 1 equals?" "Who doesn't know that? It's 2, of course," the students shouted in unison. "Can anyone explain why it equals 2? The principal asked again. The students looked at each other, but none could answer. He then said, "That strange feeling you have right now is clarity. There was a time when people did not even know that 1 + 1 equals 2. Many scholars worked hard just to prove that. But even without definitive proof, we still understand that 1 + 1 equals 2, right? That's because it is a law that has always existed in the world. It's also why we don't need to learn it, because we already automatically understand and accept it. Magic is the same. From the beginning, it has been present in this world. We can sense and accept it through our own clarity. That is why it is more important than knowledge and diligence." The children in the academy still hadn't fully processed what the headmaster said, but Scion, who was eavesdropping outside, felt his heart pounding wildly. The most important thing in learning magic is not money, nor noble status, but clarity. So then, a child like him could also become a great mage, right? Thinking this, Scion felt both excited and nervous, almost as if his heart might jump out of his chest. At that moment, the headmaster spoke up. "Child behind that wall, I want to hear your thoughts." Scion was startled. He hadn't expected that he could still be detected through such a thick wall. Should he run away now or respond? Especially in such a dirty, shabby state. He feared the headmaster, and the children inside would despise someone as poor and lowly as him, just like the bookstore owner and the guards. But he also feared that missing this chance would be a regret for life. So, driven by some great motivation, Scion used his small body to climb up the wall. His appearance was indeed very shabby, but his eyes shone brightly. Scion saw the headmaster of the Academy of Magic sitting under the tree with a few children. His demeanor was gentle, nothing like the bookstore owner or the guards. As soon as he saw Scion, he spoke up. "Hello, child. Have you come to play with me?" This noble headmaster's name was Alpheas, a 4th-level wizard and the founder of the Alpheas Academy of Magic. Scion mustered all his strength to jump down from the wall. Then he took a few steps forward. The children gathered around Alpheas were all from noble families, clean and tidy in appearance, quite different from Scion. Some of them, upon seeing his appearance, immediately recognized he was a commoner and rudely chased him away. But the headmaster of Alpheas was different. "It's all right, come over here. What did this old man just say that caught your attention?" The gentle demeanor of the Alpheas headmaster made Scion feel less inferior. Although still quite shy, he dared to voice his wish. I want to see magic. I've only ever seen it in books, but never witnessed it in real life." Before Alpheas could respond, the students nearby began to murmur. They called Scion a liar, believing that a commoner couldn't possibly read books. Scion knew he had no voice here, so he bowed his head low and pleaded. "Please, sir, any spell is fine. I just want to witness it with my own eyes." Alpheas chuckled. "Ha ha, it's simple. I will show you all a spell that can create wind." No sooner had he finished speaking than a strong gust of wind blew in, lifting Scion high into the sky. Not only you, but the kids around the principal were also blown away. Each one of them was enjoying it, except Scion, who was both scared and confused. After reaching a certain height, the whole group began to fall down. While they were still excited, Scion's heart seemed like it would drop from fear. This was the first time he had ever free-fallen in his life, and from such a terrifying height. Terrified, he shut his eyes tightly. After a while, Scion no longer heard the wind whistling by his ears, only the giggling of the children. He opened his eyes to find himself hovering just a meter above the ground. The students using magic teased him for being such a coward. Principal Alpheas couldn't help but laugh heartily. "How do you feel? That's magic." Scion landed safely, but his heart was still pounding from fear. So this is what magic really is. So sublime, far beyond the understanding that any book could provide. "What exactly is magic, Principal?" Scion stammered, still unable to overcome the shock. Alpheas stroked his long beard. apparently searching for an easy example to explain. Impatient, Siren spoke up. Please tell me the truth. His voice was quite loud, making outsiders think Siren was being rude to the principal. The noble students were amazed because no one had ever dared raise their voice at Alpheas before, not even the teachers. They were sure that Alpheas would become angry and punish Siren. But when he saw the intelligent face and bright eyes of the boy, Alpheas couldn't stay angry. He burst out laughing. Ha ha, if you really want to know, I will explain. It's a bit complicated. He stroked his beard as he explained to Siren what true magic really is. It is something beyond the ordinary. In other words, it is an expansion of the mind to discover the truth of the world. It is something unrealistic, but perhaps because of that, it is closer to the truth. Really? Siren suddenly asked. Alpheas couldn't hide the excitement on his face, because what Siren just said was something even the noble-born students here hadn't realized themselves. Did you read this in a book? He asked. No, but I have seen similarities across many books. Many ideas from great people were once considered irrational, shunned by society, but eventually they had to accept those ideas as newly discovered truths. So the truth is actually hidden within those irrational things. That's what I thought. Siren replied. As Alpheas listened, he kept nodding. He seemed very pleased with this intelligent and sharp child. Despite the difficult circumstances, he tried to absorb and sift through the scarce information he had to truly understand the matter. It's just a pity that he is only a commoner. After all, his resources can never compare to those noble children, so that Siren could understand more about magic. Alpheas called out a pink-haired girl named Sumin and asked her to enter the spiritual world. Then he took a handful of coins from his pocket and asked Sumin to guess how many coins he was holding. Sumin almost didn't need to think and directly answered the number 6. And to everyone's surprise, the answer was completely correct. Siren was extremely astonished, with 100,000 questions rushing through his mind. Anticipating that he would think this way, Alpheas explained. When a mage concentrates their mind, they become sharp enough to sense everything around them. In fact, more advanced mages can even count the number of leaves on a tree from a very far distance. This is called an extraordinarily sensitive mental state, or the spiritual world. While explaining, Alpheas continued to change the number of coins in his hand. This time, Sumin guessed correctly again. He went on, a mage who can enter the spiritual world perceives the outside world through a supernatural ability and can ultimately master reality itself. It's not limited to small things like counting coins. They also have the capacity to sense the entire situation happening right before their eyes. This is also the fundamental ability I want you to achieve if you aspire to become a mage, because not everyone can enter this spiritual world state. First, you need to be able to sense yourself. Try practicing in a quiet place, then break through the vague thoughts in your mind. When you can do that, a new world will be open for you to explore. Do you understand what I mean? So if you cannot feel yourself, you won't be able to master your own thoughts. Siren asked back. Alpheas was repeatedly surprised by Siren's questions. He asked him to try to feel himself right here, because ultimately, if Siren couldn't do that, then he would be disqualified from studying magic. What exactly is the self? Siren began searching for the answer to that question. While the brain is just an organ, and the senses and reality you perceive cannot surpass the brain's concept. You don't have to figure out its meaning, but rather feel it. Like that, after quite a long while, Siren opened his eyes. In front of him were still Principal Alpheas and the group of students, but it seemed like something was different. Alpheas asked with a hopeful look, "What do you feel now?" Siren, drenched in sweat, answered, "Sound, I hear all the sounds." The children laughed heartily. Of course you would hear the sound. Alpheas did not show his feelings clearly, but seemed quite disappointed. He thought Siren couldn't do it, just as he had initially predicted, because what happens inside the spiritual world is in another dimension. There, people sense things with completely different senses, similar to synesthesia, a neurological condition where the brain processes data through multiple senses simultaneously. At that time, you could smell sounds, taste light, and sense the landscape through the breeze. Yet Siren said he heard sounds which proved he hadn't entered the spiritual world at all. After all, this isn't something just anyone can do. Alpheas slowly stood up, gently patted Siren's head to comfort him. Well done. If you keep practicing, in the future you might be able to hear many more sounds. Then Alpheas turned to his students and said, "All right, the special lesson is over. Let's head back to school." After leaving, Alpheas still felt a sense of regret, because finding a smart child like Siren is no easy matter. He simply thought that if Siren were born into a noble family and had been educated from a young age, then perhaps what he achieved would far surpass those other children. As for Siren, he climbed over the wall to return to the outside. However, Siren's mood was extremely chaotic, because he knew that just now he had entered the spiritual world for the first time. He only told Alpheas that he heard sounds, but he couldn't recount everything that followed. After that overwhelming sound, he felt as if he had been torn into hundreds of pieces and scattered across the world. He felt he was no longer a small entity, but that he was the entire world itself. That feeling caused tears to unconsciously stream down Siren's face. He couldn't help but tremble before the vastness and grandeur of this world. It was just a brief moment, but Siren truly escaped his own body and became boundless, merging into the world. He plunged ahead running, as if wanting to vent the emotions inside him. It was because of that chaos that Siren accidentally collided head-on with a passerby. Only he fell flat backward, while the other party was quite tall and big. Siren frantically apologized, but the other party had no intention of letting him off. Beside him were a few others as well. The one Siren had bumped into immediately grabbed Siren's collar. "Are you crazy or what? When you hit someone you have to pay, right?" I'm sorry. Siren stammered in panic. "Sorry won't make it enough. You belong to the Lang Society, right? Have you come to take my life?" Siren had absolutely no idea what the Lang Society the other party mentioned was. But if it kept like this, at best he'd get beaten, at worst he'd lose his life. In the midst of his panic, he suddenly heard a female voice ring out. "What are you guys doing? Anything interesting?" "Miss Ami, why are you here? Are you bored again?" The thug quickly turned to greet the newcomer but still didn't let go of Siren's collar. The one called Miss Ami was a young noblewoman with striking red hair. Siren initially wanted to ask for help, but when he saw she was a noble, he immediately gave up the idea. The thug quickly turned to greet the newcomer, but still didn't let go of Siren's collar. On the side of the thugs, after greeting Ami, they turned back to the main issue. First, Siren was struck squarely in the knee and immediately collapsed to the ground, his entire body trembling in pain. Bullying a tiny child like Siren did not embarrass them. On the contrary, it only excited them more. The whole gang began to surround him, continuously using crude language to provoke him, even dragging Siren's parents into their insults. Seeing them dare to mention his parents, Siren's expression immediately changed, from fearful to filled with hatred. The opponents also noticed his anger, but Siren had no chance to fight back. Right after, he was kicked straight in the head. The big thugs rushed forward to gang up on a child. Siren couldn't resist. He just held his head and endured. After a while, Ami couldn't hold back any longer and slyly stepped closer. "Stop! At this rate, he'll really die." Then she sat down beside Siren and asked, "Are you okay?" I didn't do anything. I just happened to walk by," Siren explained while crying, seemingly finding a glimmer of hope in this girl. "All right, stop it," Ami said. "Isn't there any more fun to be had?" Siren thought he would be saved, but he didn't expect that the seemingly pure girl was actually even stranger than those thugs. In Ami's eyes, Siren was truly just a toy. "We plan to beat him up, then sell him to the village in the south. He's just a civilian, no need to worry." One thug spoke up. Siren immediately fell into despair. He began to regret not sitting still with Mr. Ma earlier. If those guys really sold him off, would he never see his parents again in his lifetime? Ami stared at Siren with a judging gaze for a long moment, then suddenly gave a strange smile. "Slaves shouldn't have flaws, right? If so, why don't I just confirm it myself?" The group of thugs surrounding them immediately burst into loud laughter. "Ha ha ha, Miss Ami, you mean to check on him? Did you hear that, kid? Take your clothes off." Hearing the two words, "take your clothes off," Ami's face changed color and she stepped back automatically. Originally, she only intended to tease Siren a little and then let him go. But she didn't expect these crazy guys to be serious about it. Moreover, looking at Siren at that moment, he seemed about to lose his mind. The threatening laughter of the thugs faded gradually in his mind. Instead, Siren clearly heard the flap of a fly's wings passing by. Then the space seemed to freeze. Siren felt his mind drifting backwards several hours when he saw Principal Alpheas and a group of students sitting under the old tree's shade, and he was reading a wind-creating spell for Siren to see. He no longer doubted. He was inside his own memory. Alpheas's spell became clear, all pouring into Siren's mind, turning into his proprietary knowledge capital. While Siren's soul exited to travel to the world of memory, in reality, he stood frozen like a log. The thugs, seeing his lack of reaction, went crazy and roughly grabbed his collar, shaking him. "You brat Ryan, are you deaf? Do I look like I'm joking?" Only Ami noticed the unusual situation. She quickly shouted, "Stop," but it was already too late. Siren, relying on the memories he had just recovered, subconsciously cast the wind spell, just like Alpheas had done. A large whirlwind appeared, sweeping all the thugs up into the... When Siren came back to his senses, they had already begun to fall freely. From such a height, it was understandable that they would break their arms and legs. That was only natural. With just one move, Siren defeated nearly a dozen thugs many times his size, while he himself still didn't fully understand how he had done it. Ami shouted loudly, rushed forward, and temporarily snapped Siren back to reality. "What the hell are you? Where did you learn magic? Why does an ordinary civilian like you possess magic?" At that moment, a few people, having heard the loud noise, ran over. Fearing a crowd and complications, Ami quickly fled before they could arrive. Siren was amazed to see her darting like a squirrel, sprinting to the rooftop, and then disappearing. But that no longer mattered. What was important was that in front of Siren now was a chaotic mess, and he was certain that the newcomers wouldn't give him a chance to explain. Siren wanted to escape. He couldn't afford to be caught again, so he ran headlong out of that alley. Leaving the village for the first time brought Siren many terrifying experiences. He felt the world was too frightening and just wanted to return quickly into his parents' embrace, that was all. Meanwhile, Ami had returned home. Her family originally belonged to the Sis clan, one of the top noble families. Ami returned home in a huff because she had been defeated by a commoner kid. Kami Sakura, the head of the family, upon seeing his daughter come back, immediately guessed. "You've finished all your lessons. There's nothing enjoyable at all, father," Ami replied sullenly before going up to her room. Sakura could only sigh. "I don't know when you'll ever mature. Even if you are a genius, you mustn't be so indifferent. Otherwise, someday you'll be outdone." He spoke casually, but the last sentence struck directly at Ami's sore spot. Because today she truly had been outdone, and by a commoner kid, no less. Seeing his daughter suddenly silent, Sakura was a bit surprised. Normally, whenever criticized by him, Ami would argue loudly, but today was different. After a moment of silence, she suddenly asked, in a tone unlike her usual demeanor, "Father, that magic. Do you know anyone at the Magic Academy who could introduce me?" After that stormy journey, Siren finally found his father. Upon meeting Vincent, he immediately threw himself into his arms, crying and saying he had been lost. The two returned to the small village, but from then on, Siren's personality changed completely. Winter arrived. The next day, when Vincent returned home, he only saw his wife sitting and knitting a scarf. Alina said that Siren had gone to the logging area to chop more firewood, even as heavy snow was falling. Uneasy, Vincent immediately went searching. Although they were not biologically father and son, he had raised Siren since childhood and always regarded him as his own son. With that paternal affection, Vincent clearly sensed the change in his son after the spring trip to the city. Although Siren only said he got lost, Vincent still felt that things were far from simple. At this moment, Siren was in the forest chopping wood. Even though several days had passed, he still could not forget the day he unconsciously unleashed magic to attack the thugs. Since then, he had not been able to use it again even once. The magic that day was summoned instinctively, but lacking basic knowledge, Siren could not reproduce it. However, now he had mastered entering the spiritual world. Inside it, Siren could sense everything, shapes, scents, all the details of the tree in front of him at once. He even saw its weakest point. That allowed Siren to swing his axe, with a strike that brought down a tree 5 to 6 times taller than his body. The entire scene was witnessed by Vincent. As an experienced hunter, he immediately recognized this as a lightning strike phenomenon, targeting the tree's weak point so one blow could fell it. But why could Siren, a small, skinny child, do something even skilled hunters struggle to achieve? Watching his little son carefully sawing the tree trunk in the freezing winter snow, Vincent could not hold back tears. Meanwhile, Siren was extremely excited, because this was the first time he successfully created Thunder Strike after countless attempts. It was just like the day he unconsciously summoned magic. Siren knew he was not as fortunate as noble children, but that did not stop his desire to seek foundational knowledge about magic. Tomorrow, the day after, and the days following, he would continue repeating this process to feel the magic, because he believed that one day opportunity would certainly come to him. This sincere persistence truly brought Siren some achievements. Time passed. 3 years later, Siren had grown much taller, and his hair had grown longer. He had succeeded in creating Thunder Strike with perfect accuracy every time. Now, he was almost one with nature, even able to sense the trembling of each bush, the movement of insects, or the nutrients flowing through the roots. But Siren knew that was not all. If he continued practicing, a new world would open up. Today, he had spent 5 hours meditating in the forest to cultivate his spiritual realm. After achieving success, Siren carried the firewood back home. On the way, he encountered 2 white horses. Such rare and precious horses normally never appeared in remote areas. In front of his house, a luxurious carriage was parked. Shirone immediately guessed that his family had guests. Entering the house, he saw his parents were both tense, which made him uneasy as well. "You're home, come and meet this person," Vincent called out. The owner of that luxurious carriage was the assassin steward of the Ent family. He introduced himself as Temmo Ryan. Shirone did not know why such a figure came to see him, since the Ojan family, the second highest nobility in the kingdom, had nothing to do with his family. Nevertheless, Shirone responded politely. Temmo Ryan stepped forward, carefully observing Shirone's face and stature, as if examining a precious item. "So can you read?" he asked. "I've learned a little since I was young," Shirone replied. Temmo Ryan pondered for a moment, then nodded, and continued to scrutinize him. "You seem well brought up. Just a hunter's son, yet you can read. You're also a good child. Wait, could you explain to me why you came here?" Shirone seemed impatient. Finally, Temmo Ryan revealed the true purpose of his visit. He came to recruit Shirone to work for the Own family. Although Shirone didn't understand how he knew him, the job was clearly stated, to move a total of 10,000 books out of the main library of the mansion. Among them were many important volumes. This work was to be completed within 2 years. Transportation would be handled by others, but sorting would be done only by Temmo Ryan and Shirone together. The moment Shirone heard the words library, his heart pounded wildly. Moreover, it was the Own family's library, surely filled with precious knowledge for a mage. But Temmo Ryan continued coldly. "The only people who know about this are your family. If even one book leaks out, or word of this matter gets out, the lives of both you and your family will be destroyed." At that moment, Shirone finally understood why his parents looked so worried. Of course, because the work was so dangerous, the Own family would pay a hefty sum, an amount Vincent could never earn even if he hunted all his life. But he was not so greedy for money as to willingly sell his precious son. He agreed to Temmo Ryan's request simply because he wanted his son to freely read the books in the Own family's library. Temmo Ryan looked at Vincent, smirking mockingly. Those words were no different from saying that Vincent was raising Shirone just for money. He immediately stood up suddenly, banging the table. "I'm not doing it for money. I only want Shirone to be able to fulfill his dream." Temmo Ryan burst into loud laughter. "Ha ha, you think too much. You think the boy will have a career? Stop dreaming. If you're not doing it for money, then what reason do you have to beg me to choose this son of yours?" His tone was full of sarcasm. Vincent nearly shouted, "He knows how to read." He recalled that when Shirone was little, Alina only taught him a few letters for fun. He did not expect that by the time he was 5 or 6, he had taught himself to read and write. Vincent still clearly remembered the obedient, adorable appearance of the boy then, and above all, his sharp intelligence. Every time Vincent looked into Shirone's clear, bright eyes and saw his focused posture while reading, a thought flashed through his mind. Could this adopted child possibly be from noble lineage? If Shirone had been raised by a noble family instead of a hunter's family, his life might have been different. During all those days, Vincent struggled with a painful ideological conflict. On one hand, he just wanted to keep Shirone by his side and raise him to be a hunter, a woodcutter like himself. But on the other hand, every time he saw Shirone spending hours in the forest, diligently practicing and reading books, his heart ached. In the end, Vincent was the one who took the initiative to approach Temmo Ryan, after hearing that the Own family was looking for a literate commoner child. All he wanted was for Shirone to be able to read the books he so deeply desired. Unexpectedly, that arrogant man accused Vincent of wanting to sell the child for money. This truly infuriated him. "I don't need any money. If I had known you would look at me like that, I wouldn't have come to beg you. Now get out of my house immediately." Temmo Ryan was also proud by nature, so when he was insulted to his face like that, he immediately turned to leave. But just as he reached the door, Shirone quickly called out, I will take the job." Vincent was horrified, while Temmo Ryan narrowed his eyes, scrutinizing him. "Are you serious? I'm not threatening you. Just a little rumor is enough to cost you your life." But Shirone remained determined. "I can keep it a secret. No matter what happens, I will not blame you or the Own family." Seeing the determination in the young man's eyes, Temmo Ryan said no more. "Very well, I will send a carriage to pick you up within a week. During that time, if you change your mind, there is still time. But once you set foot in the Own mansion, you will not be allowed to leave until the task is complete." Having said that, he left, leaving the 3 of them inside the house. Only then did Vincent frantically ask his son, "Shirone, why did you agree? Those bastards only want a scapegoat. "This is my fault. I will take responsibility. You must refuse immediately." Vincent's face was covered in tears. Scion also began to cry, but he did not blame his father. On the contrary, he cried knowing that Vincent had given him an invaluable gift, the chance to step into the own family's library, home to magical books he would never dare to dream of his entire life. "Father, thank you so much," Scion cried while breaking into a radiant smile. Vincent hurriedly embraced him, continuously comforting him. "Don't worry, Scion. Remember to come back safe and sound. I guarantee they will not lay a finger on any member of this family." At that moment, Vincent truly did not know whether his actions were right or wrong. Even Alina could not hold back her tears out of worry for her son. But if Scion had made up his mind, they could not stop him. 1 week later, Mo Ryan kept his appointment and sent someone to pick up Scion. After having Vincent sign a pledge, they hurriedly took him away. The carriage door closed and began to wheel the carriage. Scion immediately entered the spiritual realm. He saw Vincent and Alina hugging each other, crying bitterly. In his subconscious, Scion wanted to reach out to touch his parents, but the last spark of reason made him withdraw his hand. Yes, this opportunity was a double-edged sword. Working for the own family was very dangerous, but it would also bring Scion immense knowledge, and he would no longer tremble and retreat. Speaking of the own family, their main residence was in Gray's City, within the Kingdom of Thea, not far from the capital, Basuki. This was a family renowned for training orthodox swordsmen. The previous head of the family was a third-rank swordsman, and the current head, Bishop Owen, was a fourth-rank Orthodox knight. In short, they were capable of controlling many powerful forces within the city. After an unknown amount of time, the carriage brought Scion to the gates of the Owen mansion. This was his first time setting foot in a noble family, moreover a second-rank noble, an extremely powerful force within the kingdom. The majestic and magnificent scene before him overwhelmed him. 2 attendants led Scion to the administrative room cum butler's resting room, which would also be where he stayed for the next 2 years. There Mo Ryan was already waiting. He did not let Scion rest, but immediately took him to the family's grand library to explain his mission. Entering the library, Scion was even more overwhelmed. He had never seen so many books before. For a demanding person like you, this place is nothing less than paradise. The Owen clan has just built a new library, so all the books here need to be transferred there. Scion's task is to arrange them according to the weekly incoming list, finding and gathering them based on the book titles. Working hours are from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. daily. Outside of these hours, you are allowed to rest but not permitted to leave the mansion, nor to enter the garden without permission. Mo Ryan is the head steward, so he is much busier, but besides him, there are other stewards who will teach Scion the clan's protocols. He asked, "Do you have any other questions?" Scion was still processing the information he had just heard. He felt this truly was a risk worth taking. He responded with a question, "When do I start work?" "Tomorrow." Mo Ryan answered curtly. The next morning, Scion wore a brand new steward uniform, carrying the list as he stepped into the grand library. After a night of reflection, he finally understood why such a large family like the Owens would entrust the arrangement of books to just one person. Perhaps they needed a consistent standard of organization. For example, take a book titled History of Swordsmanship. Some might file it under martial arts and sword techniques, while others might place it under comprehensive history. Having experienced many systems, Scion realized all knowledge is interconnected, and the core element that links them all is history. Knowledge is layered atop a single axis called history. Among the 10,000 books in this library, about 850 are history books, and Scion plans to read them all within 2 years, to get closer to his dream of becoming a wizard. Time passed slowly like that. Scion quickly adapted to the job. One evening, while secretly reading more books in the library, he heard footsteps. Mo Ryan and a deputy steward came in. Scion hurriedly put away his book because reading outside working hours was not allowed. "Have you organized everything properly, working overtime again?" Mo Ryan asked. "Yes, sir." Scion stood at attention and replied. Mo Ryan did not suspect anything and only reminded him, "Don't let your body weaken. You still have 2 years in this library. The most important thing is to be responsible for everything you do. If you become exhausted and cause mistakes, who knows when your head might roll off your neck." After leaving the new list, Mo Ryan was about to leave, but after just a few steps, he suddenly turned back and walked straight to Scion, making him extremely nervous. He worried that he might have been caught reading secretly, but Mo Ryan only stepped forward and adjusted the bow tie on Scion's collar. In this library, not only the stewards, but also the master of the house and the young master often come here. Pay attention to your uniform, Don't disgrace the own family. He also reminded him further. He further added, cut your long hair short. After finishing his words, he truly left. Scion breathed a sigh of relief, thinking about tying his hair neatly like his father. But then he sank into a deeper worry. The knowledge in the library was overwhelmingly vast. Scion originally wanted to memorize to remember quickly, but if he wanted to access it any time, he had to thoroughly understand every event. Therefore, he forced himself to cram more words into his mind, until he was exhausted and collapsed on the table. In his drowsy sleep, a hand reached out to take the book he was reading. Temmo Ryan didn't know when he had returned, softly clicking his tongue. Foolish, I've spent a whole month reading this volume. Did you think you could succeed by studying alone? If you had chosen to read more practical books, I would have forbidden you from coming here outside working hours. However, it was fortunate because he was just a determined fool. 3 months had passed, and Scion began to get used to working at the Ojin family's great library. He also learned many other things from the maids. After 3 months of working, Scion realized that, in fact, the nobles didn't really care about 1 or 2 books going missing. That also meant there probably wasn't a single book in the library that was too important. But that didn't mean Scion would be any safer, so he still stuck to the principle he had when Temmu Ryan came to him, that he must not allow himself to make any mistakes. While he was lost in deep thought, the door of the great library suddenly flew open, followed by a voice piercing his eardrums. Scion, you bastard, you damned old man. He jumped in surprise and looked up. The person who stormed in was a tall young man with blue hair, Ryan Ojin. After Ryan, another voice rang out, even more threatening this time. Ryan, how dare you run away? When I catch you, you'll have to run another 100 laps. Ryan hurriedly dashed towards Scion, and then crawled under the desk in front of him. Before hiding, he didn't forget to remind Scion not to tell the next person coming that he was hiding there. Ryan's large physique put a lot of pressure on Scion, but the person rushing into the great library after him was even bigger. He shouted, I know you're hiding here, Ryan. Hey, kid, there was a little bean-sized boy with blue hair who just barged in here, right? Scion was speechless. If the blue-haired kid is bean-sized, then in this uncle's eyes, what does Scion's skinny frame count as? But the man looked so scary that Scion had to probe his identity first. Excuse me, may I ask who you are? He roared, I am the swordsmanship instructor. I am the teacher who has the authority to beat that bean-sized kid to a pulp clear. The words clear seemed to pierce Scion's eardrums. He felt that if he didn't answer, this uncle might just bury him then and there. Therefore, although the youngest master had strongly warned him, Scion had to honestly confess that Ryan was hiding under the bookshelf nearby. The swordsmanship instructor immediately grabbed Ryan by the collar with one hand and pulled him out. Master, this is just a misunderstanding, Ryan hurriedly explained. But the other party didn't give him a chance. Ryan was thrown hard onto the ground by his master, who then grabbed his leg and dragged him away. Come with me, you scoundrel who dares to skip practice. You need to be taught a lesson in discipline. Ryan's expression was one of extreme misery. Scion could clearly read the mouth movement of the boy at that moment. You will pay for this. But Ryan's swordsmanship instructor looked even more powerful than the head of the household. So Scion had no other choice. After that day, he vaguely heard that the youngest master had been taken to the mountains for cultivation. Therefore, in the following days, no one suddenly burst into the library shouting, causing Scion to be startled anymore. During the following time at the Grand Library, Scion continued to both complete his work and take advantage of time to read books. The first book took him 20 days to finish, but after fully understanding that entire volume, he read 82 books within just 4 months. Everything progressed exactly as Scion expected. Only the beginning was difficult, and afterward no book contained entirely new content. If he could build a foundation with the first 200 books, the remaining 650 would be easier to absorb. When reading books about history and the origins of magic, Scion began to doubt whether studying history and the origins of magic at this point was the right choice. But because he had previously studied the formation of all things, he became even more certain that this decision was correct. If a scholar creates a theorem, then so does a mage. But mages must also realize that theory to apply it in practice. Therefore, mages are similar to scholars. However, not all scholars are mages, because not everyone can enter the atheistic sensory state of consciousness, which is the spiritual world. Thus, Scion grew even more confident that by absorbing a vast amount of knowledge conveyed in these books, he could become a true mage. You kept thinking those peaceful days would last forever, until one evening. Ryan angrily shouted, "You bastard, I've crossed through hell to wait for this day." Still the green hair, tall figure, and that piercingly annoying voice. Scion silently broke out in a cold sweat. This young master was truly persistent. After enduring that grueling ordeal on the mountain, he still remembered the grudge he exposed in the library. Ryan was so furious that his teeth clenched rattlingly. "Do you know how many troubles I've had to get through, you bastard?" Then he began recounting how his master had tormented him, climbing countless cliff faces until his fingers had no strength left. Yet every time he thought he was about to die, Ryan remembered the grudge in the library and was somehow pumped up with new strength. Scion sighed silently. This young master was not merely stubborn in holding grudges, but his anger seemed to have been accumulating, reaching a peak. "Don't you dare open your mouth to speak. I asked for your help and trusted you, but you turned your back to accuse me to the master. Just seeing a weakling like you makes me want to vomit." As he spoke, Ryan grabbed Sion's collar. "That's not true. I was only telling the truth, sir. Don't try to justify yourself. You should have said you didn't follow my request. That would have been the right thing to say." Sion sighed silently. It seemed that reasoning with someone this angry and overwhelmingly powerful was impossible. "So, young master, what should I do?" Ryan seemed surprised when Sion asked him back with such a calm demeanor. Then he burst into hearty laughter and dragged Sion to the sword training ground, even though it was already midnight. Sion thought that the other intended to use a sword to strike him until he was satisfied. He didn't want to lose the chance that his parents had risked their lives to beg for, so he resolved to lie still and endure Ryan's blows. However, after a while of eyeing the weapons hanging on the rack, Ryan randomly grabbed a wooden sword and tossed it to Sion. He asked Sion to duel him one-on-one. "I am not as cowardly as you think. This is the price for underestimating me. You are destined to become a great swordsman, and you will have to face the fury of my sword." "What cowardly thing have I done, young master?" Because Ryan kept calling me a coward, Sion seemed agitated and snapped back. "As a servant in the Ojin family, you should protect the Ojin household, yet you betrayed me to the master just because you were afraid of being punished. Isn't that cowardice?" When Ryan said this, Sion could clearly feel his gaze change, becoming more ferocious. Sion subconsciously gripped the sword tightly, which was exactly what Ryan wanted. Because the skill gap between them was so large, Ryan allowed Sion to make the first 3 moves. Sion was extremely tense. Although it was only a wooden sword and couldn't kill him outright, the wood was very hard, and if he broke a bone, Sion would be sent home and lose this job. A question kept flashing through his mind. What should I do now? After a few seconds of thought, Sion clenched his sword tightly and launched a fierce attack. But on the very first strike, Ryan easily dodged it. On the second attempt, Sion struck again. He blocked it with his own sword, unlike Sion's trembling hands holding the sword. Ryan clearly had a much stronger foundation and superior strength. Sweat was pouring down Sion's neck. He only had one last chance to attack his opponent, and if he failed this time, Sion would lose completely. He focused all his spirit, entering his soul world. In the spiritual realm, Sion could sense the weakest point on his opponent's sword, just like the times he had successfully created the thunder strike while chopping wood. After identifying the target, Sion immediately launched the attack. Ryan immediately raised his sword to block, and even mocked Sion's ridiculously exaggerated stance. However, when Sion's sword came down, Ryan could no longer laugh, as the sword in his hand instantly shattered into many pieces. Ryan was utterly terrified. He stood frozen, staring at the broken sword in his hand for a long time. Sion's sword had also broken, but he had succeeded. Ryan allowed Sion 3 moves, the first to feel the force and calculate the opponent's timing, the second as a test, and executed his plan on the third. This was the thunder strike he had practiced for 3 years. Ryan trembled as he spoke. "Where did you learn swordsmanship?" "This is not a sword technique. This is just lightning strike," Sion replied honestly. "Huh." Ryan put on a puzzled expression. Sion even patiently explained that his father was a hunter, and from a young age, he had followed him up the mountain to chop wood. Because of his weak physique, he couldn't chop wood in the usual way, so he discovered this technique to make chopping easier. Lightning strike is the name the lumberjacks gave it. Ryan grew increasingly confused. Such a powerful strike was discovered by his opponent while chopping wood, whereas he had been wielding a sword for 15 years and still lost to the son of a lumberjack. Moreover, what Sion just called lightning strike was actually the all-killing sword technique, a secret technique of the Ojin family, which Ryan's older brother had learned when he was just 12 years old. At that time, Ryan had been defeated by his older brother using exactly this technique. Today, he was defeated by Sion using the same skill. "I won't accept this." Ryan clenched his fists tightly and shouted, unable to hold back. seeing his opponent's expression grow more serious. Scion, who had just relaxed a bit, began to tense up again. "Young master, have I made you uncomfortable?" "Shut up," Ryan barked. Then he pulled out another sword, this time a real, genuine sword, and threw it towards Scion. "Because both our weapons were destroyed, this duel isn't over yet. If you have mastered the all-killing sword technique, then I should treat you accordingly." Sion's heart seemed ready to leap out of his chest. Don't tell me the young master has gone mad and actually wants to duel with a real sword. Fortunately, Ryan wasn't that crazy yet. A real sword duel was real, but before that, he gave Scion 1 month to prepare. 1 month sounds long, but for someone like Scion who has never had any foundation in swordsmanship, it was practically useless. Holding the sword in his hand, his whole body kept trembling uncontrollably. If it were a real sword, he could actually lose his life. Scion didn't want to risk his life and begged Ryan to reconsider, arguing that since he had never learned swordsmanship in his life, how could he possibly duel? But Ryan had absolutely no intention of taking back his words. "That's why I give you a month. If you can master sword techniques that can kill just by chopping wood, then somehow you will manage it. And don't think about running away, because I'm certain I will surpass you." The sword in his hand wasn't too heavy, but Scion felt it was truly crushing his heart. After returning to the Grand Library and gathering information, Scion finally understood why the youngest master was so tense. It was said that the people of the Ojin clan possessed 2 hair colors, black and green. The clan chief, Ojinbov, had black hair and fathered 3 sons and 1 daughter. His eldest son had black hair and was currently a level 6 swordsman. The eldest daughter has blue hair and possesses a special musical talent, so she is currently working as a musician in the palace instead of pursuing the family's path of swordsmanship. The second son, Ojin, also has black hair. He is a prodigy who mastered the all-kill sword technique by the age of 12. Ryan Ojin, however, is completely different from his siblings. The household servants all agree that he is rather incompetent, even though he has his own dedicated instructor. Sion's mood was deeply shattered. He began to regret why he hadn't allowed Ryan to beat him thoroughly with a wooden sword back then, instead of resisting and letting things escalate to this point. Ryan's self-esteem was seriously damaged, and it seemed he was determined to win a match against Scion to finally lift this psychological burden. Scion even cried from the stress. If he died in the upcoming match against Ryan within a month, surely his parents would no longer live in peace. Thinking of his parents, Scion would not allow himself to continue losing spirit. "Think harder, you are going to become a mage," Scion silently thought. After that, he began searching for some books in the library. Back when he was living in the mountains, Scion had been very confident in his physical strength. Therefore, he felt that learning some additional defensive skills would surely allow him to survive. Thus, Scion started studying everything within his capability. Meanwhile, Ryan plunged into intense training. This sudden enthusiasm greatly surprised his swordsmanship mentor. In fact, it was from the very mouth of the child, who had always been avoiding practice until now demanding that I give him even more intense and rigorous training methods. The swordsmanship teacher is not stupid. He quickly realized that something had happened to Ryan, but he only replied that nothing was wrong. Seeing Ryan so determined, he stopped asking questions and instead began to give him a grueling, devilish training regimen, much more brutal than before. While Ryan was sweating profusely on the training ground, Scion was carefully studying the force diagram. It is considered a simple schematic of the human body. If mages have spirit domains, swordsmen have force diagrams to help them visualize their own bodies. The force diagram can push limits to the extreme. Those who master the force diagram can perfectly utilize and control every cell in their body. This is the most important factor in becoming a swordsman. This aspect is completely opposite to the spirit domain that Scion had opened, but it also intrigued him. Should I try it? Scion thought silently, and he thought about it as he hurriedly closed the book in his hands, closed his eyes, and began to sense himself. This is the first step in opening the force diagram, and it is quite simple because it is similar to entering the spirit domain. If opening the spirit domain requires a person to erase themselves, then opening the force diagram requires them to delve deeply into their own existence. In fact, Scion did not want to invest all his effort into the force diagram, because it is the opposite of the spirit domain. Therefore, he shifted focus to learning some basic swordsmanship skills using the spirit domain foundation he already had. Scion carried a pile of swordsmanship books out to the backyard. He started with the most basic things, the 8 directions of slashing. At the same time, Ryan was still pushing himself to train to the point that even his swordsmanship teacher was frightened. He had never seen his student get this agitated, despite having taught him since he was a child. Ryan's mood was very complicated. In reality, Shirone was just the last straw. The core issue was that Ryan was always compared to his older siblings. The fact that he had trained in swordsmanship for 15 years, but still hadn't unlocked his power, made him a failure in the Ojin clan. The master who trained him in swordsmanship, though seeming strict, was actually very compassionate. Today, seeing the frightening change in his student, he truly shed tears. "Ryan, that's enough. Let's stop here for today." The sword in Ryan's hand was easily caught by his teacher. Only then did he feel all the muscles in his body aching. Ryan obediently put down his sword, then sat down, staring into the distance. "What are you thinking about?" Ryan's master asked as he wiped the sweat from his pupil's face. "I'm thinking my hands hurt so badly they might rot away." "Ryan, you know, I never knew you could try this hard before. But I think you did very well. Have you ever thought about what you've done best so far?" "I don't know. I only know the things I haven't done well." "Yes, exactly. That's why you aren't a genius." Ryan got annoyed. He thought his master was mocking him. But when he turned around, Ryan saw that the man's expression was very serious, and his eyes were heavy with unspoken thoughts. He said, "All geniuses know what they are best at, and they only put an effort to act when they are 10,000% confident they will do well. But geniuses also have a fear, which is the diligence to achieve the impossible, a burning will that challenges what cannot be done. That will and determination are the nemesis of genius." "Thank you, master. Among all the encouragement I've ever heard, I like these words the most." Ryan's swordsmanship teacher was not speaking casually. Those words truly sparked a strong fighting spirit in him. If talent is not innate, then he will grit his teeth and forge it through diligent, hard training. Ryan wants to use determination to turn the impossible into possible. He wants to win. And coincidentally, that is exactly what Shirone thought, as he was struggling to practice basic swordsmanship right now. Shirone was also very serious about his first sword strikes. Swordsmanship is the process of learning the actions to take a person's life. Therefore, its downside is an intense psychological battle of life and death. Without a training partner, Shirone could only grip the sword that Ryan threw him and imagine an invisible enemy in front of him who could attack from many directions. In fact, when attacking with a sword, there are 8 major directions, and Shirone, with his extraordinary efforts, had trained himself in those 8 slashes, as well as the way to counter the 8 directions of slashes. You just keep practicing like that, and then discover the path of swordsmanship is as infinite as magic. All that, Shirone, what you have learned on your own, is only like a grain of sand in the desert. "Parents, I am sorry, but perhaps this time I cannot come home anymore," Shirone said to himself, his tone full of sorrow. But since stepping into the Ojin family until now, he has never regretted it. Although the path he walks faces death, he has also seen a wonderful world. A month passed swiftly. Shirone arrived at the training ground as promised and entered the life-or-death duel with Ryan. In just a short month, he could clearly sense that the aura on the opponent had completely changed, and Ryan could also feel that from Shirone, because only a month ago, he still appeared in a chaotic form both in stance and center of balance. But now Shirone was extremely steady. Even though it was his first time holding a real sword, he remained very calm. This made Ryan inevitably associate Shirone with his older brother Rai, and it made Ryan even more eager to win. Ryan was the one who charged first. Shirone was extremely tense because although servants called him incompetent, Ryan's swordsmanship was on a completely different level from him. But fortunately, thanks to relentless effort over the past month, Shirone could still sense the direction of the sword. Shirone's calmness and his way of observing the sword's direction. It only made the hot blood rush to Ryan's brain. He thought silently, was he not afraid of this sword? In fact, Shirone was not a reckless person, nor was he unafraid of death, but he had completely controlled his emotions. On the other side, Ryan continued to attack. This time it was a strike from the right hand. Shirone once again managed to block it. But if the first time, the second time was still gentle. Then from the following strikes, Ryan's attack speed kept increasing. It began to surpass Shirone's ability to sense the direction of the sword. Finally, the tip of Ryan's sword successfully traced a shallow cut across Shirone's chest. Fresh blood gushed out. Shirone knew he was about to lose. He quickly changed his strategy, using full force to retreat backward. The pain from his chest made it hard for him to comprehend. Ryan looked into his eyes and seemed to understand that confusion, growing even more smug. What he had just used was the Ojin sword technique to train with the great sword. Every strike was Ryan's full effort, so the power was completely different from normal swordsmanship. After injuring Shirone, he became even more bloodthirsty. In Ryan's eyes now, there was only one goal: to crush Shirone with his own strength. They continued into the second round. But this time, Siren again felt puzzled. If Ryan had swung upward after hitting his chest, he would have been cut at the side already. However, Ryan's subsequent attacks didn't seem to be finishing moves. This meant his understanding of swordsmanship was less than Siren had thought. Ryan could wield the sword skillfully, but didn't clearly understand how to use techniques effectively. This is the loophole for Siren to turn the tide. He immediately changed his combat plan, focusing all his strength on attacking. Siren had learned the basic sword swing, so each strike was relatively decisive. Ryan was truly shocked once again. Why did he suddenly attack? Wasn't he already exhausted? He was extremely confused and became even more disoriented, realizing clearly that Siren's techniques were very simple, but he still couldn't block them. Ryan, who was in a dominant position, frantically attacking, suddenly fell into a passive stance. Noticing the opponent's stamina gradually declining after awkward parries, Siren grew even more hopeful about preserving his life. He only needed to persist in maintaining his stamina and continue this attack rhythm to win. On Ryan's side, his psyche was wildly unsettled. Siren's dominance brought the ghost of the past back into his mind once more. Ryan remembered his older brother, Rai, who was hailed by their father as a genius, and was also the one who had defeated him with precise swordplay. Recalling the arrogant, fully satisfied smile his brother wore when he defeated him, Ryan's anger erupted again. He funneled all that anger into an assault against Siren. Ryan's sudden loss of composure made Siren think that he had given up. But just then, a new problem arose. Ryan really was not calm, but the burst of anger caused his sword swings to multiply in speed. They became so fast that Siren couldn't read all the directions of the sword strike. In the final strike, he felt as if death itself had come to tap him on the shoulder. However, with the strong hero's aura, of course Siren would not lose his life. Neither hit the other because Ryan's sword had been knocked away by Siren's sword. Ryan stood there, strangely dazed. While Siren was so exhausted that he could hardly breathe, Ryan could clearly see in that final strike that Siren had read the direction of his own sword and changed his grip in the blink of an eye. Siren's sword tip pointed upward, directly meeting Ryan's downward swinging blade. With all the strength he had left, Siren defeated Ryan. By knocking away his sword, Siren gasped for breath. He had won but still could not believe that he actually had. And even though he truly won, Siren felt awkward. Although it was a contest, the opponent was still a noble, and Siren had once again trampled on Ryan's already lofty pride. Not knowing what else Ryan might do next, Siren was tense, unable to imagine how furious his opponent's next rage might be. But this time, Ryan was not angry. He simply bowed his head and said 3 words, "I admit defeat." While Siren was still regaining his composure, Ryan scratched his head and repeated those 3 words, "I admit defeat," several more times in a flustered manner. "I admit defeat, and you have won. Since I have lost, even if you decide to take my life, I have nothing to say." Siren was somewhat surprised. He did not expect Ryan to admit defeat so readily. Moreover, you have the freedom to decide someone's life and death. But he is a noble. How could you stay alive if you even touched a single strand of his hair? "What nonsense are you spouting, young master?" Siren nearly shouted. Ryan said, "We fought with our very lives, and I already admitted defeat. So you have the right to take my life, don't you? It's just that you're the only one willing to gamble your life on this. Meanwhile, I'm the one who wants to live." Siren yelled, meaning that from the start I found this fight utterly boring. From the start, why do you blame me and want to beat me up when you're actually the one avoiding your master just because you don't want to train? The anger boiling in his mind made Siren fearless as he bluntly criticized the young master in front of him. Ryan was not about to lose and immediately fired back. "Wait, you bastard. Who's supposed to blame whom here? It's all because you're a coward. Even if this is the first time we've met and under such circumstances, you should still respect me, right?" "Respect my ass," Siren cut him off. "Have you ever thought about how much trouble you've put me through? I've been caught between the son of the family head and your sword-teaching master. If you truly deserved respect, you wouldn't have put someone as insignificant as me in such a situation." Siren grew increasingly heated as he spoke, unleashing all his frustration in a torrent of scolding directed at Ryan. Honestly, this young master was a genuine brat. He challenged Siren purely out of his soaring pride, not because he wanted to corner Siren to death. Meanwhile, Siren truly believed this time he might end up selling salt after all. After berating Ryan thoroughly, he was so exhausted that he slumped down onto the ground. Across from him, Ryan was being verbally scolded by the household servant so swiftly he barely had time to react. But strangely, he wasn't angry at all. In the moment Siren unleashed his anger, Ryan sensed that the cold, calm warrior he had just confronted vanished. Instead, there was merely a teenager about his own age. And most importantly, although Ryan recognized Siren as undoubtedly a genius, He did not mock Ryan as Rai once did. Shirone gave his all in the confrontation, both to protect himself and to show respect for his opponent. Because of this, Ryan viewed the young man before him in a different light. "What's your name?" Ryan suddenly asked. "Aryan Shirone." Shirone mumbled, not knowing what the other meant. "And I am Ojin T. Ryan. Ryan responded clearly. Shirone once again felt puzzled. Who didn't know that this blue-haired youth was Ryan Ojin? The confusion peaked when Ryan suddenly reached out to help Shirone up, accompanied by a proposal. "Let's become friends." The duel between the two had ended just like that. Shirone continued to return to his work. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed since the first time he stepped into the Ojin mansion. In total, Shirone had categorized 7,028 out of 10,453 books. This progress far exceeded expectations. Even the tough Temu Ryan couldn't help but leave a word of praise, because the number of books needing Shirone's categorization had significantly decreased, which further improved work efficiency. Shirone's goal of finishing all 850 history books now only had 200 volumes left. Every day, he read up to 3 books. Soon, Shirone would complete the foundational knowledge he had always dreamed of. Not only that, thanks to Ryan, he also experienced swordsmanship and came to understand the true nature of fear. As a result, the endurance of Shirone's spirit realm had increased. Although the start was rather slow, he knew that as long as he did not give up, he would eventually achieve his goal. And most importantly, Shirone had found his first true friend in life, the very person who had shouted in his face when they first met. After that duel, Ryan almost always stayed rooted in the great library to talk with Shirone. He realized that Ryan was quite emotional and had very endearing qualities, completely contrasting with his imposing appearance. Although sometimes Ryan's behavior gave Shirone a headache, for example, rummaging through the stack of books he had just categorized. But all in all, this friend was still quite trustworthy. It's just that after becoming close friends, Ryan started to become lazy with his training. For example, today, after finishing the basics, he told his master that he wanted to go to the library to study, and then stayed rooted there. Shirone also knew that this seemingly lazy person was in fact a flame burning quietly, ready to flare up at any moment. Ryan would become strong as long as he had the opportunity, so there was no need to push him to train excessively. Thus, Shirone agreed to let Ryan stay in the library and read with him. But after only 10 minutes, Ryan was already tired of the piles of words. "Shirone, didn't you say you want to become a mage? Do you really have to read that many books? 800 volumes, you're crazy," Ryan grumbled. "Of course, actually I was still behind. Before coming here, I had no opportunity to study. But now, after reading more than 600 history books, I almost know everything," Shirone replied. Ryan had no interest in reading, so he just focused on observing Shirone. Every time he watched him work, Ryan was amazed all over again. Shirone's reading speed was unbelievably fast, to the point that Ryan felt he could be sucked into the book at any moment. Because he was so bored, Ryan read a few words and then started chatting with Shirone. Whenever they were near each other, it was as noisy as a market. Because of this, Shirone couldn't concentrate on his reading either. The two began debating about the book in Ryan's hands. It was about the most common comparisons made across the continent. If a swordsman and a wizard were to face off, who would be the winner? Of course, the swordsman would win. As soon as Shirone heard this, he stood up abruptly, because the owner of that voice was Ojin Rai, the second young master of the Ojin family. He was also the older brother, whom Ryan loathed intensely. Shirone was extremely tense, afraid that Rai had overheard the previous conversation between the two. A servant who dares to speak disrespectfully to noble children would not be easily forgiven. Rai's gaze at that moment seemed as if it could pierce right through him. Seeing Shirone at a loss for words, Ryan had to speak up for him. "Then why do you speak as if you already know the outcome? Are you sure you're not siding with the swordsman just because you yourself are a swordsman?" "Oh, I didn't expect you to pay so much attention to this matter. Just look at the status of swordsmen and wizards across the continent, and you'll see immediately." Ryan laughed heartily. "We're talking about combat here. What does their social status have to do with it? Do people choose battlefield positions based on military rank? You're not seriously going to say something nonsensical like that, are you?" Ryan showed clear defiance, but Rai didn't bother to care. Instead, he turned to Shirone, who was standing nearby. "Oh, you standing over there, what do you think?" It was just a perfectly normal question, but Shirone felt an invisible pressure emanating from his opponent. He could not guess what Rai's intentions were, and whether you remain safe if you don't give him the answer he wants. Even so, Shirone couldn't ignore the question and could only cautiously share his opinion. He believed that if the swordsman and the mage were on equal footing, The swordsman would find it difficult to win once the mage entered the spiritual realm. But if the swordsman uses his exceptional physical strength to fight before the mage manages to enter the spiritual realm, he could completely win. No, you are wrong. Rai cut Scion off. Without Scion noticing, he had stepped right in front of him. Rai was taller than Scion, so his presence was overwhelmingly imposing. You are wrong, the mage will lose. As he spoke these words, Rai wore a triumphant smile. That familiar look of superiority made Ryan extremely displeased. That expression of Rai's had been there since he was young. Whenever he was annoyed with someone, he enjoyed trampling on what they held dear. It used to be Ryan, and now he wanted to suppress Scion. You seem to enjoy history. I'm sure you've heard of the 5 divine armors, haven't you? Those are sacred relics capable of breaking a mage's spiritual world. I am referring to that magic resistance. Scion was stunned by Rai's words. A mage's innate ability is the spiritual realm, or the spiritual world. Fighting a mage within their spiritual realm is like confronting a pack of sharks in the deep sea. However, there is something that can stir the waters and distract the sharks. That is precisely why magic resistance was created. If the spiritual world has no ability to influence, then magic cannot either. Once someone possesses a relic with this attribute, the mage will be completely powerless. But ultimately, this is still just a hypothesis. Previously, magic resistance was a precious power created from the mana flow in a dragon's heart. That alone was enough to make its value soar. Additionally, because the frequency oscillations couldn't be controlled, no amount of wealth could improve their effectiveness. Even master mages like Iakra could only harness up to 65% of the power of the 5 gods' armor. Therefore, the price to acquire this relic is even more exorbitant. To this day, it also holds historical value. The worth of magic resistance can be equal to the annual budget of an entire kingdom. But the biggest problem here is, the creators of magic resistance are themselves mages. They created something to counter themselves because the demand was too great. Therefore, acquiring it is easy, and those mages are lining up, eager to be valued. Rai's tone dripped with disdain. Ryan was extremely upset because he knew Scion dreamed of becoming a mage, yet Rai openly insulted that profession. However, the one who should have been angry, Scion, showed little change in his emotions. That's just the nature of mages. He suddenly broke into a bright smile and said, this attitude of Scion surprised both Ojin brothers, especially Rai. What did you say? He thought he misheard and asked again. You are not wrong. Anti-magic is indeed created by mages. It is used to limit the power of magic within no-magic zones, and it is also effectively utilized to support the training of magic apprentices. Sion's knowledge was no less than Rai's. He knew that anti-magic was truly used to counter mages, but its existence was more like an intellectual achievement serving a noble purpose. Therefore, Scion maintained his view that Rai's opinion that swordsmen are superior to mages was merely a one-sided and mistaken perspective. Rai was the second young master of the Ojin family, always used to harshly trampling others with his arrogant mouth. Yet today, right in his own house, he was pressed by Scion with a calm tone. But Sion's attitude was still very proper, leaving Rai no grounds to argue. HMPH, the theory you speak of and reality are two very different things. No matter what, the truth is mages will never be able to defeat swordsmen. After saying this, Rai grumpily walked away. Only then could Scion finally breathe a sigh of relief. Just now, when the young master Rai appeared with such a frightening face, he thought he was done for. Ryan was also very happy, because in the end, he found a witty way to sarcastically jab back at Rai. After that event, Rai no longer came to the library to cause trouble. Because of that, Scion had more time to focus on his work. 6 months later, as winter had just arrived, he had completed the task of sorting more than 10,000 books. He finished the job 6 months earlier than expected. Temu Ryan seemed very relieved that the books neglected for over 20 years were finally properly categorized. Scion had completed the task and should have been able to return home, but a steward from the Ojin household regretted losing such a useful worker like him. He wanted to force an extension of Sion's contract with ridiculous reasons, but Temu Ryan disagreed with this. Meanwhile, at the Grand Library, Scion finished reading the last book he needed, completing a year and a half of hard work reading books for the noble Ojin family. Ryan, who was practicing swordsmanship, hurried over after hearing the news that he had finished the book-sorting task. He was worried that Scion would just go home. Seeing that Scion had read through more than 800 volumes, Ryan looked even more excited than Scion himself. To celebrate this, Scion wanted to do something very special, and he asked Ryan to take him on a tour of his family's mansion. Although they lived in the same Triang estate, Most of the time, they only met at the library. Moreover, Ryan took the initiative to come, while Sion was just a worker who had never had the chance to see what a noble's real home looked like. Coincidentally, the entire Ojin family was out and would return after the afternoon, so Ryan cheerfully agreed to his request. Sion had already seen that the grand library was very large, but when he stepped inside the mansion, he was truly overwhelmed. Just one room here must be as large as his entire house. Ryan really was the heir of a wealthy family, yet not only was he not arrogant at all, he was even somewhat carefree. Ryan took Sion to tour his bedroom, which was the smallest room located at the end of the corridor. Sion had prepared himself to be dazzled by luxury once he entered. However, the truth was that Ryan's bedroom was much simpler than the other rooms. Most importantly, it was filled with objects for training and sword practice, and the messy bed looked like a temporary resting spot after training. Sion couldn't believe his eyes. The heir like Ryan lived in such a simple place. Sion couldn't believe his eyes. The heir like Ryan lived in such a simple place. Indeed, you really can't judge a book by its cover. After the tour, Sion and Ryan decided to play poker together. However, Ryan kept complaining about losing. "Hey, you're cheating by using your spiritual sense, aren't you? Who do you think I am to play such dirty tricks?" Sion replied. Then he revealed to Ryan how he guessed the cards correctly. It was by observing his habits. He has the habit of arranging several cards on the outside, and it is quite easy to tell when he holds a pair because he is very easy to read. Ryan was hit right in the nerve. He really just wanted to stomp his feet and throw a tantrum to feel better. Observational skills will bring great benefits even when he is not focused on any particular thought. Therefore, when observing an opponent, he should watch all of their actions, and then he can guess what they are thinking. Sion honestly gave Ryan this advice, hoping he would soon break through to new limits for himself. But unexpectedly, before he could finish 2 sentences, Ryan had already dozed off. Sion originally intended to return to his own room, but then heard a melodious voice. No matter the melody, tone, or rhythm, everything was controlled perfectly by the player. Sion unconsciously followed the music. He knew that in this world there was only one person who could reach this level on the piano, and that was Ryan's sister, Rena Ojin. "So what do you think of my sonata?" After the music stopped, Rena suddenly asked. At that moment, Sion was hiding behind the door and was startled, realizing he had been discovered. He stopped hiding and walked straight in front of her. I think it was wonderful." Sion's mood began to tense up again. Maybe because a noble's daughter was in front of him, or perhaps because Rena was so beautiful. "Ah, yes, miss. I am in charge of sorting books in the library, and it has been a year now," Rena exclaimed, because she had already heard of Sion before, the smart boy who could categorize more than 10,000 books by himself. "If that's the case, have you ever played the piano before?" Sion really wanted to refuse. Aside from Ryan, he didn't want to get involved with any other heirs. Moreover, Rena was an expert at using force techniques while performing. Because of this, he just wanted to stay away from her. Ryan once said that his sister was the worst-tempered person in this mansion. So when responding, Sion appeared very cautious. "No, miss. Then let me teach you. Come here." Rena proactively scooted to one side, leaving some space on the chair. Sion truly did not dare to sit down. What on earth was wrong with these Ojin siblings? Sion thought to himself. He couldn't be careless. She was an expert in using force techniques during her performance. He awkwardly replied, "It's okay." Though he said it was okay, inside Sion was in turmoil. Ryan had said the most difficult person in this mansion was his sister. She looked at Sion and smiled gently. "Then I will teach you. Sit down here." After saying that, one hand of hers rested on the piano keys, and the other hand patted the spot beside her. He was stunned by her invitation, sweat beginning to trickle down his forehead. He was constantly tense, his inner self shattered like broken steel. "Just sit there." Rene keenly noticed his tense expression and calmly reassured him. "You're fine. I've given permission, so no one will blame you." He pressed his lips tightly, hesitating and wavering, his inner struggle relentless. He insisted on doing this, yet he felt he had no right to refuse. Finally, he reluctantly sat down, both nervous and excited, his heart fluttering endlessly. He told himself, "I won't have another chance to sit before a piano again." He seriously listened as she gave him a basic music lesson. She was enthusiastic, patiently teaching each musical note. Now he knew the notes do, re, mi, and the symbols in the sheet music. She asked him to try pressing these 3 keys simultaneously. He quickly obeyed, gently pressing the 3 keys together. The sound that came out made him a bit embarrassed. The sound was soaring, clear, and moving. He exclaimed, "What a beautiful resonance." She turned to look at him and said in surprise, "A good start." His mood was restless and hard to describe, his eyes betraying his awkwardness. He shyly said, "Sorry if I'm asking too much, but can I try playing?" She was very surprised by this proposal, but quickly agreed, "All right." Scion bowed his head, realizing his earlier behavior was somewhat rude and the offer seemed a bit excessive. He felt that it wasn't very appropriate. Maybe this won't be good. But Riene smiled gently. That's how everyone starts. Scion placed both hands on the piano keys, gently touching down. He began moving his fingers gracefully, pressing the black and white keys. A clear, enchanting sound arose. Riene was so amazed that she covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes staring fixedly at his hands. She admired him. Unbelievable. He played all the notes wrong. But he did not hesitate at all when pressing the piano keys. Should I stop him? Vina, sweating as she watched Scion play, had a thought cross her mind. Although he was completely off, producing chaotic, imperfect sounds, there was still a strange allure. She listened intently. Then suddenly, Jenna noticed something. She was astonished to see Scion seemingly, perfectly imitating the feeling of the piece she had just played. The harmony in each note left her stunned. Scion's eyes suddenly glowed with an emerald light. He seemed trapped in a matrix of musical notes. The two sat in the center of a dim, mystical glow. Under his skillful hands, the melody continued to resonate. His hands moved lightly and gracefully, the notes dancing around the space. Riene furrowed her brows, her gaze turning serious. It seemed he was on the right track. She pondered, that sounds more accurate, actually. His hands moved up and down continuously, like a true artist. She concentrated on listening, savoring each melody he wove. Riene was stunned as she looked at the man before her. What was happening was unbelievable. An indescribable feeling rose within her. What is this? It can't be called a performance. Yet he seemed to see through everything, sensing the very essence. Riene observed every gesture and action of Scion. A series of questions surfaced in her mind. How could this child be a butler? Moreover, he even looked aristocratic. Noticing her thoughtful expression, he realized and quickly said, "Sorry, I just..." The shout startled Scion, causing sweat to bead on his forehead again. Ryan entered with an irritated expression and angry eyes. Before finishing his sentence, Ryan's shout tore through the melodic atmosphere. "Don't be so noisy, you annoying gremlin." He stood at Riene's door, scratching lightly under his shirt, revealing a toned body. He kept yelling, "Since we're home, just rest. Why are you acting so crazy, sis?" Looking into the room besides her, the person next to Riene surprised Ryan. He looked at Scion in astonishment. "Hey, you're here too, Scion?" In an awkward situation, Scion shyly, embarrassedly, and awkwardly replied, "Yes. Yes, that's right." Riene, sitting beside them, was also confused, not quite understanding the situation. "Huh, do you two know each other?" Ryan stood still. Scion kept looking from him to her, shyly stammering, "No, no. I haven't had a chance to answer yet," sweat streaming down, feeling uneasy inside. Will the friendship between Ryan and me be exposed? I just feel like I've committed some crime. From behind, Ryan scratched himself and said casually, "Oh, Scion, he's my friend." He seemed frozen, crouching down on the floor, eyes filled with terror, "Sir." "Sir, what are you saying, Ryan?" Deep down, he understood clearly, probably afraid that revealing this friendship wouldn't end well. Ryan smiled brightly, hands on his hips, reassuring him. "Don't worry, the gremlin witch may be difficult, but she doesn't care about those things." Scion's eyes widened, unable to believe what he had just heard. Inside, turmoil rose. What? How could that be? How could she not care? He didn't know how to face her when Riene spoke up first. "So your name? Your Scion?" She squatted down beside him, gentle and caring. She lightly placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry, if Ryan says you two are friends, then that's good. The boy is a bit annoying, but he's always responsible for his words." Her behavior was beyond his imagination, making him somewhat worried. Riene did not really care whether he and Ryan were truly friends or not, but what intrigued her most was his thoughts. She was curious. "So what did you think about while playing the piano? I really want to know." He was frightened by this question, a myriad of question marks flashing through his mind. Ryan was equally astonished. "What? Scion played? I thought you were going crazy in here." Witnessing that scene, his 16 years of logic seemed to collapse. His beliefs shattered in an instant. Inside, he kept wondering, doesn't he care that his sister is friends with a commoner? Scion turned to look at Ryan. "But why did you lie? Your sister is a beautiful, kind young lady." Hearing that, Riene burst into amused laughter. As for Ryan, he turned pale, his eyes filled with fear. "Don't be fooled by her. She's a witch. Who knows when she might be following you and swallow you whole." He was amazed by those words. Riene leaned in close, covering her mouth with her hand, and then smiled apologetically. "Sorry, my little brother is a bit childish. I'm glad he has you as a friend. Please keep an eye on him for me." He looked at Riene's gentle smile and softly replied, "It's nothing. Actually, I'm the one who owes him thanks." Her enthusiasm made Scion shy. Rene then praised him enthusiastically. "Oh my, you are really adorable." Seeing that, Ryan smiled slyly. "So cute. Why don't you keep him around and let him join our family while you're at it?" Rene was surprised by this opinion, then broke into an interested smile. "So close like this, aren't you afraid he'll steal your sister away?" Ryan laughed with satisfaction. "What are you talking about? You're not the one I'm worried about, it's Sire." As soon as she finished speaking, a hand grabbed Ryan's collar tightly. The two siblings launched into a fight. Rene didn't hold back and didn't care that her opponent was her brother, fiercely throwing punches. "Thought I didn't say anything because you think you're so good." They struggled right there on the floor. Ryan couldn't stand it and yelled loudly, "Ouch, that hurts." Sire watched this scene, his mind in turmoil, feeling confused. Just as he thought he was beginning to understand the nobility, they became even more unpredictable. After taking a beating, Ryan snorted coldly and shouted, "HMPH, why did you come back home? You just recently had time off." Rene calmly dusted off her hands. "Don't you know, the family is preparing for the examination. I came to pick up Guy. Tomorrow we're leaving and he's visiting a friend before coming back." Ryan's mouth dropped open in shock. "What? Are you crazy?" He lowered his head, his voice fatting. "So the distance is that far?" He noticed that Ryan seemed upset and kept recalling Rene's words. "The certification exam is the standard and condition for mages or swordsmen to be recognized, not only within the kingdom, but across the entire continent. Each year, more than 1,000 people participate, but fewer than 30 succeed each time. There is also another certification. If you graduate from an academy certified by the kingdom, such as the Alpheas Magic Academy, you will have the opportunity to become a level 10 junior mage. After that, you must earn achievement points from organizations and guilds to be able to rank up. Hundreds, even thousands of people flock here every year. The line stretches endlessly. Wherever there is wealth and fame, people naturally gather. Even after obtaining certificates, they still yearn for more. This examination is legendary, and Guy was preparing to take it at the age of 18. Ryan admired him openly. A genius truly stands apart. Besides, they also have the full backing of their family. He sighed deeply, feeling downcast. Rene stepped forward, gently patting his head to comfort him. "You're doing fine. I'll go prepare dinner. It's seafood from the royal palace, so I have to cook it myself." She turned to Sire, smiling brightly. "It's been a pleasure meeting you, Sire. See you next time." He looked bewildered. "Yes, have a good day, sir." He silently wondered, will I ever have the chance to see him again? Thinking back to the moment when Rene played the piano, that feeling was wonderful. But tomorrow, I will leave the mansion. Rene left, leaving Sire and Ryan behind. He turned and hesitated before speaking. "Ryan, your sister." He looked at him indifferently, eyes distant but resolute. He asked, "Does she have a boyfriend yet?" The question left Ryan stunned and astonished. Seeing that expression, Sire realized he'd spoken out of turn and quickly tried to cover. "It's nothing." Ryan burst out laughing, unable to keep his mouth shut, his eyes sparkling. He quickly reacted, flustered. "I was just curious, forget that question. And besides, not yet." He hadn't finished his sentence when Ryan darted out the door, shouting, "Sister!" Sire panicked, calling after him. "I said it's nothing." He gritted his teeth, his face anxious. Seeing Ryan about to run out to the door, he hurriedly chased after him. A feeling of urgency filled his heart. He blamed himself for letting words slip, feeling sad inside. Meanwhile, Ryan ran outside at full speed, not forgetting to shout loudly, "Sister, Sire is asking." Ryan stood on the floor, grabbed the railing, then bent down and yelled loudly, "If you have a boyfriend." Rene was then leading the maidservants to prepare the meal from the royal palace. Ryan's shouts echoed throughout the hall. He shouted once more, "Sister, do you have a boyfriend yet?" Those words stunned everyone, who all turned around to look. Sire hurriedly covered Ryan's mouth from behind and pulled him back, causing him to utter muffled, unclear sounds. He held him tightly, trying to stop him, but the vague noises still stirred a lively buzz among the crowd. "What's going on?" "A boyfriend." Inside, Rene's heart was pounding like a drum. Seeing the maids turn to look at her, she could only force a smile, trying to hide her embarrassment and shyness. She laughed and said, "They're just teasing each other, don't mind it." Rene and the maids continued walking. As they walked, she said, "Now that we've finished separating the poison, next we have to steam it." Everyone responded in unison, "Yes, miss." Behind the nearby wall, the chief butler had long been standing ready. He caught every detail of what had just happened. He turned back and called to a servant nearby, "Hands, any guests today?" The servant lowered his head and replied, "No scheduled appointments, Sir Chief Butler." Upstairs, Ryan was about to say more. "Sire, he said he saw her preparing to cause trouble." Sire immediately grabbed his arm. The chief butler spoke coldly to the servant. "I've heard that name before. Now I remember. His eyes sharp as a blade, he turned and ordered his subordinate. Tell Mo Ryan to come to my office immediately. He frowned, and a sharp voice barked out. Immediately, the blue sky, above the forest covered by tall tree canopies. The sound of heavy breathing and Ryan's training echoed through the air. A shout came, "Stop, rest for 10 minutes." He was exhausted, gasping for breath. His left hand held the training stick while his right kept wiping sweat. Ket, his master, stroked his beard and thought about his pupil. He's become more enthusiastic again. It's been about a year, hasn't it? Watching Ryan practicing enthusiastically, the old man recalled how last time he gave up very quickly. He pondered, but once he enters the royal palace, the boy will change. The key is to hold onto the strategy map. Sweat streamed down Ryan's face. Suddenly, a loud, urgent call rang out. "Young master." Ryan was startled and glanced in that direction. A man wearing a hat, looking hurried and anxious, ran over, his voice carrying far. "Young master, Miss Duenna demands you return to the mansion immediately." Ryan was about to drink water, but stopped at those words. He frowned her. "If it's praise for my brother, I'm not interested. Tell her to do as she pleases." The servant quickly denied. "No, the lady says that Scion is in danger. He might die." Hearing this, Ryan spat out the mouthful of water he was about to swallow. He stood up abruptly, worried. "What? Why? I thought he was coming home today." The servant, running so fast he stumbled, gasped. "The chief steward has reported to the head of the family. I'm not sure, but the lady said it's because of his connection with that lord." Ryan hastily put on his coat, anxiously turning to Ket. "Master, I have to go see father." Seeing his anxious expression, the old man knew something was wrong and pressed. "What's going on?" Ryan, a bit unsettled. "A steward named Scion is my friend. Somehow father found out. There isn't much time left. I'm sure father will forgive him if I can convince him. I will train later." No sooner had he spoken than Ket raised his voice to stop him. "You must not." Ryan paused, straightened up, unable to believe his ears. What? The magnificent mansion appeared beside the mountain peak. Inside the spacious main hall, Scion knelt on the floor with male and female servants lined up on both sides. Seated on the central throne was the head of the bishop family, sitting solemnly. On either side were Miss Duenna and young Master Gia. Behind them stood the chief steward. Scion knelt, feeling like ants crawling under his skin, burning with anxiety. Then a dignified, powerful voice rang out. "Scion Arian, sir." Just a short phrase, but it exuded the aristocratic elegance of nobility. Holding the report in his hand with an angry glare fixed on Scion, he said, "You will be executed." The entire hall shook. Whispering and murmuring erupted non-stop. How could this possibly happen? A female servant whispered, "A commoner dares to behave this way towards nobility." The gossip grew louder. Others said, "He is ignorant. Even if he is uneducated, he should at least understand these rules." All judgments reached Mo Ryan's ears. He merely glanced at the group of maids without saying a word. The three people sitting on the long couch. Bishop focused on reading the documents. Gia sat arrogantly beside him, hardly concerned, while only Shirone was restless, as if sitting on hot coals. The head butler's provided dossier was carefully reviewed. The entire staff lined up neatly, anxiety etched on their faces. Mr. Bishop used a stack of documents to accuse him. These were testimonies from numerous servants, affirming that this kid had acted carelessly in front of Ryan. He turned to Shirone and questioned, "You have read the contract details thoroughly. There should be no objections, right? Is there anything else you want to say?" Scion lowered his head, hesitating slightly, but then exclaimed, "I want to ask something." He lifted his head, eyes cautious. "If I and the young master are friends, what would happen to the young master?" The entire hall was shaken. The servants were terrified to the extreme, each thinking he was finished this time. Didn't he even understand his current situation? He should have been begging for mercy. Mr. Bishop was angry. "You still dare to ask me that?" Shirone looked at her father, then at Scion. In such a critical moment, he still had the courage to ask about matters relating to Ryan. She silently wondered, is he concerned for Ryan even though he's fallen into this situation? Mr. Bishop flew into a rage, not sparing harsh words. "You're a foolish commoner. Do you think nobility would suffer any harm from messing around with someone like you?" Scion lowered his head, sighed, then broke into a smile. He looked up, stared straight at him, and clearly admitted, "Yes, Ryan and I are friends." In front of everyone, he confessed once more, "We've been friends for a year, and I declare we will always be friends." The servants were terrified to hear these words come from his own mouth. They exclaimed in fear, "This guy." Bishop's eyes flashed with a murderous glare. The servants were curious. Why isn't he afraid at all? He used a contemptuous tone to warn, "It seems you underestimate this bishop." Losing his temper, he shouted loudly, "Head steward, deal with him quickly. Don't let this news leak out." He handed a stack of documents to the head steward. Ryan bowed respectfully as he accepted them. Two soldiers stepped forward, each grabbing one of Siren's arms, escorting him outside to face punishment. Shirone shouted, intervening, "Father, wait, please listen to me." She bowed deeply, her face betraying her worry. But Bishop turned a furious gaze towards her. He has already confessed. Once I have made a decision, I won't take it back. The servants felt like they were sitting on a powder keg, anxious for their lives. The blond man felt it was unjust and turned to the head steward to say, "Head steward, isn't this a little too harsh?" The chubby man beside him refused to accept it either and decided to speak up to protect himself. "It's unreasonable for all of us to die because of one person." Hearing this, the blond man turned pale with fear as he looked over. He grimaced and explained, "This family is our lifeline. To protect it, we must eliminate all conflicts, no matter how small." As Siren was escorted away by the two soldiers, he looked back and uttered a cryptic remark. "Now you think it's wrong, but later you will be grateful for this choice." Suddenly the main door burst open. A shout echoed, "I won't let that happen." Ryan appeared, looking hurried and urgent, holding his master's sword in hand. Shirone was overjoyed, her face lighting up as she called out loudly, "Ryan!" Her heart, which had been suspended in anxiety, finally settled. Contrary to her expectations, Bishop's face darkened, arms crossed, his gaze stern and devoid of any joy as he looked at his son. Siren looked up at Ryan. But in his eyes was not the hopeful look Shirone had, but a resigned expression, awaiting any punishment. Perhaps he feared dragging Ryan into trouble. In his impatience and anger, Ryan shouted loudly, almost losing control, "Who dares to kill my friend without my permission?" Bishop replied coldly and decisively with calmness, Just one brief word, but it was enough to show his authority and status within the clan." Below, Ryan used all his words to defend Siren. He questioned, "Why? He didn't commit any fatal mistakes. He just befriended your child." Shirone also anxiously stood up, worried for both Siren and her brother. Bishop snorted coldly, "You understand nothing. I consider the lives of commoners worthless. It doesn't take a fatal mistake to deserve death. Matters involving nobility are very complicated. You cannot imagine them." Ryan resisted, shouting angrily, "If the privilege of noble sons forces me to kill my friend, then I don't want it." Bishop looked at his son with a domineering, imposing gaze, his words heavy with class division. "You ask why that man must die. Befriending a noble means that relationship must be equal." Siren was still being escorted by two soldiers. His eyes were indifferent, but the earlier declaration only made Bishop angrier. He insulted, "Do you really think that commoner considers you a friend? There are many who only want to exploit nobles in this world." Ryan shouted loudly, vehemently objecting, "Siren would never do that." Bishop gave him a half-eyed look, impatience in his words. "How can I trust you? Prove that you and Siren are really friends." Those words left Ryan stunned, frozen in place. "Prove it?" A doubt and unease stirred within him. Shirone, standing nearby, also did not expect her father to ask such a question. She nervously looked toward him. He stared intently at him, a half-smile playing on his lips, eyes full of smug satisfaction. Ryan's thoughts were tangled like a skein of thread. If I say I can't prove it, then everything ends. He wondered, can a person prove their feelings? Ryan fell into deep thought, but inwardly knew he couldn't speak recklessly. He tried putting himself in Siren's position. If I were Siren, I'd have easily defeated him by now. Suddenly a thought struck him. What if I were Siren? He glanced over at him. I saw a carefree, relaxed face without worry or fear, but the eyes were resolute and incredibly strong. Those eyes seemed to absorb everything, just like when he competed against me. Ryan looked straight into those eyes, as if receiving his guidance, recalling every word from before. Siren had once said, "Sometimes not focusing on trivial matters brings better results." Memories came back to playing cards with him. When the cards weren't favorable, Ryan rested his head on his hand, feeling frustrated. Siren then held the ace of spades, gently saying, "Don't focus on the opponent's minor details. Look at the big picture." Siren held the ace of spades and softly said, "Don't focus on the opponent's minor details. Look at the big picture." Ryan once doubted this. "Look at the big picture?" Siren flipped the card and handed it to him. "That way you'll see their true intent." Ryan silently committed it to memory. Now Ryan felt courage renewed. Looking at the bigger picture, the person standing before him was his father, a second-rank noble, the head of the own family, a certified fourth-rank knight. He tightly gripped the sword his master had given him, firmly standing inside. Indeed, this was not a quarrel between father and son, but a duel. Rewinding to 30 minutes earlier, when Ryan received the news and prepared to leave, his master stopped him. Ryan shouted, "Master, why won't you let me go?" My friend might die. Keat applied reason calmly. Right, you're talking about the kid who works in the library, aren't you? Ryan hesitated before saying, but that kid is just a commoner. He was stunned silent when he heard those words. Ryan choked up, Master. I didn't expect you to feel the same way. You had taught me otherwise. Ryan couldn't believe the person he respected could have such narrow-minded, old-fashioned views, exactly like his father. His mood collapsed. Losing control, he shouted, if swinging a sword meant you could talk, then everyone would want to be my friend. Keat remained calm and explained, Ryan, don't you know what is most important to a noble? Nobles must eliminate every threat to their family's status. Have you ever considered the burden your friend bears when his worth is as insignificant as a fly's? Hearing this, Ryan gritted his teeth, tears streaming down his cheeks, his shoulders trembling intermittently. Every tear that fell was proof of his helplessness and inner pain. Keat advised with a warm but firm tone, don't think you can solve this problem with emotion. Ryan clenched his fists tightly, fingers gripping hard, speaking with determination but clearly overwhelmed. But I can't just stand here and do nothing. I was the one who first suggested becoming friends with him. Ryan raised his hand, his eyes blazing, his resolve at its peak. I don't want to become a coward. His words challenged adversity, and every gesture, every glance clearly showed his steadfastness. Keat looked at Ryan, his gaze changing, silently approving. He said, good determination. The boy is affectionate, honest, and pure, but that alone cannot make him a great swordsman. I have high expectations for you, and I will support you. Keat brought the sword before Ryan, handing it to him. Fortunately, he was truly not a conservative man full of prejudice. He advised and warned, I will let you leave if you bring this back with you. But if you are not ready for this, then don't even dream of stepping out of here. Ryan took the sword from his master's hand. His eyes shone with determination and seriousness. Ryan said, Master, I will never forget this favor. Each word was like a vow engraved deeply in his heart. Keat glanced at him. Remember this. Abandoning a friend is like abandoning a part of your own body. That reminder was deeply etched in Ryan's mind, making his inner self stormy. This was a duel where one's life was on the line. Returning to the present in the great hall, Ryan realized the truth his master had taught. Holding the sword in his hand, he tilted his head back and laughed loudly. The laughter echoed throughout the mansion, giving everyone goosebumps. Ryan shouted in fury, Prove we are friends? I believe it, because I believe that Scion and I are friends. He added that his very existence as Sion's friend was the proof of the friendship between the two. Bishop was furious at those sharp rebuttals. He clenched his teeth and hissed, This is absurd. This is not a father-son quarrel. He shouted angrily. The prestige of countless families was also crumbling. He kept uttering frenzied words. If it means I can avoid the downfall of the family, I am even willing to sever ties with my own son. Those words just spoken caused Shirone and all the maids to be terrified. Father, she shouted loudly. Ryan stepped forward, standing straight on both feet, his voice resolute and unwavering. If I have to do that to save my friend's life. He bowed, placing his right hand on his chest, adopting the most solemn and respectful posture. Then I will willingly leave. Everyone was fearful of that action. Bishop, enraged beyond measure, stood up abruptly, clenching both hands tightly, veins bulging. He shouted, This brat, draw your sword. If you truly consider that kid your friend, then wager your life right now. Without hesitation, Ryan drew his sword. The sharp clang of metal sounded, signaling that even the father-son relationship was about to be severed. Bishop could hardly believe his eyes seeing his son draw a sword to duel for a commoner. He looked at him and stammered, Son, you even dare to take up a sword against your own father. Ryan raised his sword, placing it before him with the tip pointed toward the sky. His eyes flashed sharply. I am not pointing the sword at you, father. I am only expressing my trust. Bishop clutched his chest, trying to appear helpless. How could you possibly have friends? You can't even get along with other noble families. Perhaps because you can't reach the level of other nobles, you keep weaker people around to comfort yourself. Ryan lowered his voice, deep and intense, his eyes blazing with unwavering resolve. This time, father is wrong. He lowered his sword, speaking firmly, Scion is a friend, and he's better than me. I want to help Scion so he can shine brilliantly in a higher position. Such determination even surprised Scion. Bishop, angry and embarrassed, pointed sharply at Scion and demanded, Did you deceive him? Did you convince him that a commoner could be friends with a noble? Those words stabbed at Sion's pride. He denied it. No. Ryan immediately stepped in front of his friend, his voice full of protection. Scion, stay right there. I will protect you. Scion knew this was a decisive moment, not just for himself, but for their friendship. He called out his name directly, Ryan. He was stunned by that call. Scion spoke up, taking full responsibility. You don't have to be responsible for everything. I will take my share. Ryan turned around, astonished as he looked at him. Scion recalled the moment when Ryan reached out his hand in friendship. He said, "From the moment you wanted to be friends with me, I had a premonition. That one day I would stand at a crossroads, having to choose between being friends with you or saving my own life." Sion's eyes were filled with gratitude. He looked at Ryan and said, "Even if it means I have to die here, I would not regret having befriended you." Ryan bowed his head, eyes brimming with tears. That sincere friendship did not disappoint him at all. He choked out, "That's right." Suddenly, Ryan lifted his face and shouted towards Bishop, "That's exactly what I mean." Those words echoed throughout the great hall, strongly affirming the friendship and an unshakable determination. Ryan continued shouting, "My friendship with Scion, even if isolated, remains a true friendship." That passionate declaration left Bishop dumbfounded, only able to frown and look at him. Shirone, standing nearby, was also moved by those heartfelt words and shed tears. She silently thought, "Even though we are not yet mature, we are still emotional beings. A true friend will never turn their back on us." The household staff were also touched, each shedding tears. The head butler glanced at Ryan and Scion, frowned, then clicked his tongue disapprovingly. Suddenly, a hearty laugh echoed throughout the mansion. "How amusing!" Everyone was surprised and looked up to the upper floor. Shirone happily called out, "Sir." Clum, her grandfather, stood upstairs looking down, full of vitality, delight, and admiration. "I never thought I would witness such a touching scene when I'm close to the end of my life. Youth truly is the best time." Shirone was overjoyed and breathed a sigh of relief. Everything was fine. If it were him, he would certainly be able to handle it more easily. In contrast to her, Bishop's expression became forced. He looked at Clum suspiciously. "Father, have you arrived?" Shirone told me it would take a few more days. Clum spoke up. "I arrived early because my friend ran away with a young lady." Having said that, he sat down comfortably on the chair. Scion was also very surprised by his appearance. He stared blankly in that direction and subconsciously recognized his identity. He was Tomia's general, a third-grade swordsman and also Ryan's grandfather. He sat cross-legged comfortably, speaking enthusiastically. "Anyway, this place is as noisy as ever. Youth really is wonderful." He was the former head of the family, Clum. While he laughed and talked with everyone, the current head of the family, his son, was not happy at all. Bishop, looking solemn, respectfully said to him, "In this situation, it's not very good either. The reputation of our family has completely collapsed." Clum didn't pay attention to his son's demeanor and enthusiastically looked toward the representative. "Don't be so quick to conclude. I've been observing from behind for a while now, and clearly everyone here has a lot to say. So why don't we first listen to each other's opinions and see if we have really lost face?" He called the first witness, the eldest daughter, Shirone Ojin. She was delighted to speak. She stood up and spoke like an orator. All eyes were on her, listening attentively. Moreover, Scion had fulfilled all the contract requirements and was supposed to leave the family today. Given such circumstances, it was hard to say that he approached Ryan with any specific ill intent. As a result, I do not believe his actions have tainted the family's honor. Clum stroked his chin, nodding as if he understood her point. He grunted coldly, "I see. If that's the case, what do you think, my second grandson?" The second witness, the second son, Zozin, was called. He had been silent until now, but his expression showed no liking for Scion. Zozin frowned, his voice hissing through clenched teeth. "I don't like that kid." Bishop stood nearby, very pleased, flashing a smug smile. He silently admired his second son's words. "That's right, I knew I could trust you." However, Zozin crossed his arms, leaned back in his chair, and said indifferently, "But this has nothing to do with me. I don't like him, but who he befriends is none of my business. I just want this matter over so we can depart for the royal palace." His words stunned Bishop, whose face darkened as he reproached. "What do you mean? You say you don't like him, then you say you don't care." Zozin softly closed his eyes and calmly repeated, "That's right." Shirone was also surprised by his attitude, her eyes shining with silent admiration. "Wow, that's my little brother's attitude." Clum laughed out loud. "The opinion of the youngest grandson, this is exactly why there's no place like home." He stroked his chin and turned to Ryan. "So, in conclusion, I want to hear the thoughts of the person who surely has observed Scion the longest." He called the third witness, Deputy Steward Temu Ryan. He cleared his throat, but the attention was fixed on the head steward. This person raised a hand near his chin, giving a subtle signal. "Remember, we do not express opinions. We obey the will of our master." Temu Ryan hesitated, then finally spoke. "Scion." He glanced at the head steward, but still spoke honestly. "He completed every task I assigned perfectly." He even finished 6 months ahead of schedule. Those words struck the head steward like a thunderclap. He did not expect Temu Ryan to dare defy the implicit order. Gritting his teeth, he silently cursed, "Has this guy gone mad?" Bishop sighed deeply, his demeanor somewhat diminished in stature. Clum looked at Temu Ryan and asked, "Do you know if those two are friends?" The deputy steward placed his hand on his chest and answered respectfully, "I know he often goes out with the young master, but I am not sure if they are truly friends. However, in my opinion, if he were an ill-mannered child, he would not have been able to organize those 10,000 books." Scion was stunned, unable to believe his ears. He didn't expect that in the mansion, besides Ryan and the kind young lady Shirone, there would be someone else who would speak up for him. Ryan glanced at him, a smirk on his lips. Finally, someone acknowledged his friend's efforts. Shirone also raised her hand to her chin, quietly pleased on Sion's behalf. Very good, the atmosphere has completely changed. But that joy was extinguished when she looked towards her father. Bishop's gaze remained unchanged. Frowning and displeased as time after time someone defended Sion, especially since Clum's return, everything was no longer under his control. Shirone understood that the only person wanting to punish Sion was still her father. Suddenly, a deep, authoritative voice rang out. "No." Clum stood up firmly. "I cannot agree to this matter." As soon as he finished speaking, Shirone and Bishop simultaneously exclaimed, "Father!" Shirone didn't understand why he changed his mind at the last moment. She had just relaxed, but now felt like ants crawling on a hot pan. Conversely, Bishop looked brighter than ever. Clum quickly corrected himself. "No, no. I understand that those two consider each other friends." Sion and Ryan stood before him, full of worry and tension. He looked at them thoughtfully. However, it must stop here. If this relationship continues, rumors will inevitably spread outside, and this could become a vulnerability that political opponents seize upon to undermine us. Bishop sat listening to the man speak with increased attention, because what he worried about had been clearly explained by Clum. Guy, sitting beside him, still paid no attention, his appearance indifferent. Clum continued, "All the members of our clan are outstanding individuals in the kingdom. Jai is even preparing to take the certification exam. Moreover, what else could I do when so many other clans depend on me like this?" The maids stood straight, and even they couldn't help but worry for their own fate and that of their families upon hearing this. For commoners, working for the nobility was already an honor. Clum then turned to Sion. "You are a smart child. I believe you will understand." Shirone looked at him, wanting to say something, but the words stuck in her throat. Ryan, however, could not sit still. He gritted his teeth, staring firmly at the man, resolute and unwilling to be bound. Clum was torn between laughter and tears as he looked at his beloved grandson. He thought to himself, "I see that you have great potential and intelligence, but why can't you understand the words I speak?" His heart was also in turmoil. He wanted Ryan to fully understand the heavy responsibility he bore, how many lives depended on him. Now he turned to Sion, wanting to know his feelings and also to learn what Ryan had gained after making this friendship. "What do you think, Sion? I want to thank you for teaching my innocent grandson what true friendship is. But I do not want this clan to be condemned because of you. So, can we end this matter here?" Sion could only lower his head, gently close his eyes, and remained silent for a long time. Then suddenly he uttered two words, "Impossible." The answer stunned both Clum and Shirone, and even Bishop found it hard to believe. Gi, who usually didn't care about anything, now had to look at him with a different gaze. Ryan was shocked, expecting Sion would beg for forgiveness and sever their friendship to save his life. But unexpectedly, he was that brave. Ryan hesitated to call his name. He looked at Sion, sincere, straightforward, and could no longer hold back as he spoke. "Sion." He placed his hand on his chest, looked at Clum, and spoke words from the bottom of his heart. "If I am an obstacle to Ryan, then I do not mind never seeing him again forever. However, that does not mean I will not consider him a friend." He asserted confidently, "Ryan and I are friends. I cannot let our friendship be constrained or tainted by anyone's words." He said to Clum, "If you take that into consideration, I will obey any order you give." The hand holding Ryan's sword trembled. He felt humiliated, tears fell again. Inside, he blamed himself, but also felt relieved that Sion did not have to die. But Sion already knew. Abandoning friends also meant abandoning a part of oneself. Ryan widened his eyes in surprise. The words his master had taught him during training were something he struggled greatly to comprehend. As for Sion, he would rather lose his life than betray the word friendship. Ryan felt deeply ashamed. He made a firm resolution, fine. After all, this is not something open for negotiation. He raised his sword straight to the sky and shouted loudly and decisively. The shout echoed like thunder. Here, I solemnly declare. Clum and Shirone were instantly terrified by his next action. She screamed, "Don't do that. I don't know what you intend, but don't." She panicked, uncertain whether her younger brother was mature enough. A single mistake could affect the fate of the entire family. Ryan thrust his sword forcefully into the ground. The resounding sound shook everyone deeply. He knelt down, drove the sword in deeply, then declared boldly, "I, Ryan Ogen, the third son of the own family, from this moment forward will become the sword of Sire." The vow echoed like thunder in the tense, suffocating atmosphere. Bishop trembled with anger. He ground his teeth fiercely, his face contorted, and growled, "What, damn brat?" The entire mansion shook under the force of his fury. The origin of the knightly vow dates back to the founding of the Kingdom of Tomia. During that chaotic era, various large and small nations fought fiercely over the Atopi colony. The strongest among them succeeded in unifying all and proclaimed the establishment of the Thea kingdom. However, the newly established kingdom had to stand against powerful neighboring countries. Therefore, instead of being purged during unification, the defeated kings were allowed to continue ruling their own territories. In the process, they had to create the Knight's Oath. The defeated kings would kneel before the new monarch, pledging that they would become swords belonging solely to their master. In return, they were granted noble status. This is the origin of the Knight's Oath and also the starting point for the emergence of the nobility. Thus, breaking the Knight's Oath meant becoming someone more despicable than a rabid dog. Ryan turned to look at everyone, then grinned mischievously. "What do you all think? Now I can't take it back, can I?" Everyone fell silent, jaws dropped at his sudden decision. Ryan still held the sword tightly in his hand, one foot planted firmly, the other kneeling. In his heart, he couldn't help but blame himself. "Master, it seems this time I've caused a catastrophe." He even imagined his master getting angry and scolding him. "I didn't give you the sword for you to do this." Sire knelt down beside him, grabbed his hand, alarmed. "Ryan, what the hell are you doing?" He did not answer, only glanced at everyone. Mr. Clum's voice rang out, his face hardened, his gaze even more resolute. "Ryan, if I am truly witnessing you say you will become his sword, then surely that boy must be worthy. Answer me." Sire helped him stand up, and the two of them looked towards the old man. Clum continued, "Is he really that talented, or is he only talented in your eyes because you yourself are useless?" Hearing this, Ryan relaxed slightly and smiled confidently. He placed his hand on his chest and shouted loudly, "A sword does not judge, it only protects." Everyone's faces darkened upon hearing that answer. Even Sire was astonished. Suddenly, a long burst of laughter echoed through the tense air. Everyone's faces darkened upon hearing that answer. Even Sire was astonished. Suddenly, a long burst of laughter echoed through the tense air. While Bishop helplessly rubbed his forehead, Clum kept praising without pause. "Your tongue is sharp, too. But with your mediocre swordsmanship, I feel sorry for your friend having to receive such a sword." Ryan didn't expect him to say that and could only stammer, "You, sir?" Clum placed his hand on Sire's shoulder, smiling reassuringly. Enough, it's all over. Although this boy isn't the sharpest sword yet, Sire, he will never betray you. Take good care of my nephew." He gently patted his shoulder. Sire closed his eyes, savoring this moment, then looked at him with grateful eyes. "Thank you for acknowledging me." Clum pointed at the head butler and ordered, "The two have sworn to be lifelong friends, so I can't just let you leave like that. Use the carriage that was meant to take Sire home to fetch his parents here." The head butler was startled but still bowed to accept the order. "Yes, right away." The two servants glanced at each other, chuckled softly, and put on their hats, getting ready. Meanwhile, the head butler silently screamed inside. Seriously. Looking up at the blue sky and the drifting clouds, he helplessly thought, "I'll never understand what nobles are thinking." Ryan finally relaxed his mood. He smiled comfortably, constantly exclaiming, "This feels great." He leaned back on the bed, stretching his arms straight out. Sire also sat down beside him. Ryan laughed and asked, "Did you see my family's expressions? Just fantastic." But Sire felt uneasy. "Ryan, the knight's vow, you didn't have to do that for me." Ryan jumped up suddenly, startling Sire. Ryan looked straight at him, eyes blazing with determination. "I'm not doing this just because you're my friend. I'm different from my brother. He has the power to influence others. I simply chose to bet my life on someone like you." Sire blushed and stammered, What?" Embarrassed, he thought silently, why did he suddenly say that? Their eyes met, then Sire sighed, "I'm feeling the pressure. But if you want to protect me, you'll need to train a lot harder." That remark made Ryan so angry he coughed up blood. Sire panicked. What's wrong?" he responded feebly. "Nothing. It's just that you hit a sore spot in my heart." At that moment, Shirone suddenly opened the door and stepped in. her voice loud and decisive. "Ryan, is it true that you swore to the knights that you would become Siren's sword?" She came in and saw her younger brother collapsed in a pool of blood, immediately worried and asked, "What's wrong with him?" Ryan summoned the last of his strength to say, "Go outside." Siren stopped her. "What are you talking about? Your sister just helped a lot. Please come in." Renee proudly stepped inside. "That's right, I bring important information from the opposition faction." Hearing this, Ryan instantly cleared his mind and asked anxiously, "What are father and grandfather doing?" She sat down on the bed and replied gently, "They are indeed ruthless, but I have already played the Knight's Oath card. Now they are planning what to do next." She looked at the two of them and continued, "I also bring important news. Father is considering enrolling you and Siren in the Cairn Swordsmanship Academy. Siren, you said her swordsmanship skills are incredible, right? You said it yourself." He was confused, but, "To that extent?" Renee smiled. "Of course. Now that you are a member of the family, I've told them all about your talents. Let's see if any of them will voluntarily invest something in you. They want to take advantage of your talent to help Ryan. Surely they arranged it for his future." After hearing this, Ryan shouted at his sister, "Without my permission, who would dare let me go to school? It was so hard that I finally got to play with Siren as I pleased." Renee didn't hesitate, immediately kicking her younger brother to the ground and stepping on him. She sighed and yelled sternly, "You damn idiot. You've already caused such a ruckus. What else do you want to do?" Ryan was defiant, turning his head to look at his sister with eyes sharp as knives, shouting, "And anyway, Siren isn't even attending the academy. Siren will be a mage in the future. He has already unlocked the spirit realm." Renee was surprised, looking at Ryan suspiciously. "What? The spirit realm? Siren has already unlocked it. Wait, does that mean you have sworn the Knight's Oath to a future mage?" She looked at her brother, unable to believe her own ears. Ryan angrily yelled, "Being useless still has its limits. Get lost now, old hag." Renee thought about Siren and Ryan fencing with each other and said, "So you used Seizure to sense the spiritual world and read Ryan's movements to win, right?" She rubbed her chin, marveling, "That's quite clever. Your spiritual world energy is pretty high, so this is completely possible." Siren awkwardly replied, "So? Then?" Renee smiled continuously in admiration. "You're amazing. From what I learned at school, the more concentrated the energy is, the stronger the spiritual world becomes, and maintaining that concentration while using a sword is absolutely wonderful." Hearing this, Siren's cheekbones flushed red, and he unconsciously rubbed his hair gently. Renee and Ryan said in unison, "So now you're embarrassed." Renee continued, "I will tell you about Siren's path. Of course, the condition for your admission to the swordsmanship school will also be included." Upon hearing this, Ryan suddenly shouted, "What? Then what will happen to your master?" Renee calmly replied, "Master Ket already knows about this. Yesterday he terminated the contract. Tomorrow morning will be when he says goodbye." Ryan grew even more shocked, gripping the sword tightly in his hand, his mind filled with sorrow. He silently thought of his master, the man about to leave this land forever. At that moment, a butler opened the door and stepped in, announcing, "Siren, your family has arrived and is waiting in the living room. The master has allowed you to go meet them first if you wish." Renee turned to ask, "What do you think, Siren?" At first, he just smiled, but unable to hide his happiness, he jumped up and shouted, "I will go." Siren ran quickly downstairs, causing the two butlers to worry and remind him, "The stairs, be careful on the stairs." Siren forced a smile, "Just talk to me as before, naturally like that." He smiled to reassure them, "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone." Although he tried to reassure them, they still firmly refused. After a few minutes, the whole group arrived in front of the living room door. Siren hurriedly pushed the door open and stepped inside, where the most beloved people were. Seeing his parents, he immediately shouted, "Mom, Dad." They were deeply moved, calling his name in unison, Siren. He seemed to abandon everything else, rushing forward to bury himself in his parents' warm embrace. The three of them held each other tightly, happiness surging. Siren looked at his parents with a heavy heart. "They have become thin. Surely they have worked hard day and night, worrying about me." Siren's mother, tears falling, reassured him, "Don't worry, we're still fine." Vincent frowned, puzzled. "Why did you suddenly call us here? If you're done, you should be going home, right? Or did they keep you from leaving?" he asked anxiously, his voice trembling. Siren quickly explained, "No, that's not it. I've been given a pretty good opportunity. Both of them were uncertain." Siren then recounted the entire sequence and the opportunity he was offered. After hearing it, both of them seemed stunned. Vincent's eyes were wide open, motionless, staring intently at his son. He forced a smile, then his voice trembled. "You mean, you became friends with a noble young master while working at the library, and that young master has sworn knighthood with you? You were even allowed to be his friend. Scion calmly replied, yes, that's correct. Vincent immediately grabbed his son's shoulders, shaking him vigorously with tears welling up. Scion, tell me the truth. How could someone as smart as you have such illusions? Is there someone treating you badly, isn't there? He was shaken until he felt like he might fly off, but still tried to shout. No, it's true. The man tightly embraced his child, crying loudly, oh God, people say those who go to a noble's house never return intact. My child. Sion's mother tried to pull her husband away. Just then, the door opened and a butler announced, young master, the head of the house has arrived. The three of them entered. Bishop spoke first, very pleased to meet you both. I am the master of this house, Bishop Ogen. Ryan bowed slightly and said, hello, I am Sion's sword. Riene gently introduced herself. I am the eldest daughter, Riene. I've heard a great deal about you too. Upon hearing this, Sion's parents were stunned, their faces turning pale. They immediately bowed respectfully. Hello, we are Sion's parents. How could such great people like you? Riene frowned slightly, surprised. Oh my, you two haven't heard from Sion yet. Vincent panicked, his voice trembling. The things the boy says, his delusions, are they all true? Even after sitting down at the luxurious banquet table filled with delicacies, he still couldn't believe it. He kept muttering inwardly, it can't be, it can't be. In the end, Vincent sat dazed as if lost in the clouds. Sion's mother was awkward, quietly lamenting, oh dear, so many dishes. After the meal, Vincent still felt like he was floating, his mind in turmoil. Sion's mother could only force a smile, feeling grateful as she accepted a cup of hot tea. Vincent felt the atmosphere suffocating, his head as if wanting to scream about what was happening. His hand trembled so much that the glass of tea in it almost slipped and fell. He thought, although I don't clearly know what the knight's oath entails, there's no way they would treat a merchant family like ours well. I need to get to the bottom of this. Thinking so, Vincent spoke up. Excuse me, I am very glad that you think highly of my son, but I am also very worried. For a noble's son like Ogen to swear the knight's oath with Sion, it really is unbelievable. Bishop frowned. To be honest, I also feel somewhat uneasy. However, for a militaristic house like Ogen's, the knight's oath is absolute. If we discriminate just because of social rank differences, it would ruin Ryan's honor. Therefore, from now on we will use honorific language. Please don't feel uncomfortable, and our family will fully support your sons. Clum laughed heartily. It's been a long time since I heard you say something right. Bishop, annoyed. Father, you're too loud. Sion thought to himself. A family head who manages and decides all major family affairs, his decisiveness and pride truly suit him, despite how difficult it was for him to decide to place a commoner under his protection. He quietly turned and saw Riene winking at him. Seeing Ryan's bright smile, he thought again, he isn't afraid of anyone at all. Bishop returned to a serious expression. To get straight to the point, I have to say, your son is a user of the spirit world. The spirit world is not something one attains just by hard work. It's a true talent, something one is born with. From what we know, he aims to become a wizard. If he wants to obtain an unofficial wizard degree as quickly as possible, then the Alpheas Magic Academy, one of the 5 most prestigious schools in the country, would be suitable. He stroked his chin and continued. I'm not saying he absolutely must enter there to become a wizard, but otherwise it would be a loss for that talent. I do not encourage otherwise, so he should study at Alpheas Academy to meet the Ogen family standards. Clum reminded, consider their limited understanding a bit. Seeing Vincent's stunned expression, Bishop immediately understood. He said bluntly, if your son graduates from a magic school, he will become a wizard. Hearing that, Vincent jumped up and trembled as he said, our son will become a wizard? Impossible. Is this a dream? Bishop continued, however, the biggest problem is his identity. Vincent was startled. He awkwardly explained, the magic school is selective, only allowing nobles' descendants to enroll. Clum added, so there is only one choice left. He said seriously, we will adopt Sion as a member of the Ogen family. Vincent was speechless, his mind in turmoil. What? Clum firmly laid out the plan. This is the only choice. I have a cousin who still has no children. If we add the boy's name to my cousin's genealogy, all problems will be resolved. However, we have no intention of taking your child away. This is only on paper. But with that, Sion will become a noble. Vincent thought to himself, Sion will become a noble. How lucky the boy must be to get such an opportunity. But if he does this, it feels like my own child is being taken away. He looked at his son with a troubled gaze, as if begging, Sion, my son, what should I do? But Sion's calm expression made him even more panicked. Could it be that he had already made up his mind? Sion glanced quietly at his father, then placed his hand on the large hand that had endured a lifetime of hardship for him, gripping it tightly. Vincent felt a sharp pain. Shirone raised his head, his eyes resolute, and said loudly, "No way, I am your son. I cannot become someone else's adopted child." Vincent shouted in alarm. Shirone, Rene, sitting opposite, quickly explained, "Shirone, this is only in name. We will still treat your parents as your biological parents. You will achieve your dream and nothing will change at all." Clum added, "The kid will become a noble. Opportunities like this don't come often." But Shirone remained firm. "If I have to change my father, then I'd rather live as a commoner." Clum angrily shouted, "Commoners can't enroll in magic school." Shirone decisively said, "Then I won't go to school." He tried another angle, "Then you won't become a mage." Bishop and Rene were astonished. Shirone insisted, "Then I won't be a mage." His words left Shirene's mother and Ryan stunned. Clum shouted excitedly, "Shirone, why are you so stubborn? This world is that easy. There are things you have to give up to succeed. If you can't, then is your dream just child's play?" Shirone replied calmly, "Perhaps so." Those words left Clum stunned. Vincent shed tears. The once passionate face now showed only awkwardness and sadness. Shirone spoke, "No matter how wonderful your dream is, it is something you receive from your parents. If the parents are the roots, then your dream is the fruit that draws nourishment from them." He recalled the memories of standing shoulder to shoulder with his family, the day he learned to read, the opportunity to work at Ojan's house. All were possible because of having parents as roots. Shirone was resolute. "This is just one opportunity. It is nothing compared to the countless opportunities your parents have given you." Shirone laughed and decisively said, "Now asking me to deny my roots is like telling me to die. I am grateful for everyone's offer, but my parents are my only family." Everyone in the room remained motionless after he finished speaking. No one uttered another word. Clum was so astonished that he widened his eyes, silently thinking, "What is this feeling of guilt? What is this child trying to say?" Suddenly, Vincent bent down and shouted, "Please accept Shirone as your adopted son. I beg you, I implore you." Shirone was embarrassed, while Clum remained silent. He understood Vincent's intent but kept his gaze fixed on Shirone, paying no attention to anyone else. Vincent struggled to speak, his voice strained. "Shirone is not my biological son." Shirone's mother was stunned. "Vincent, what are you talking about?" He still bowed his head, his voice trembling. "We cannot have children. We got Shirone through an unexpected event. I'm sure you can tell the boy definitely comes from a noble family. He is extraordinary." Clum and Rene grew more and more astonished as they listened. Vincent continued, "If he becomes the adopted child of a noble family, then that's where he truly belongs. This is not about parents abandoning their child, but about bringing him back to his real origins." Bishop thought to himself, "Is that really so?" Looking at Shirone, he also realized the boy is completely different from his parents. He stroked his chin, speculating, but could he really want to give up his own son? Shirone could no longer listen. He grasped his father's arm excitedly and shouted loudly, "Father, what are you doing? How could you say that without ever telling me before?" Vincent avoided his son's gaze, his voice choked. "I'm sorry, but you are grown now, you have to know." Shirone said sternly, "Do you really think I didn't know?" The words shocked Vincent deeply. Shirone fell silent, then said with difficulty, "The reason I didn't ask is because a person only has one father and one mother, and I want it to be that way. So now you want me to have 6 parents." Vincent panicked, his voice trembling, tears streaming down. "Father, I just don't want you to give up your own dream because of me." Shirone shouted loudly, resolutely, "Who's giving up their dream? As long as I try, the opportunity will come." He burst into tears, looking at his father in pain. "Have you ever thought about how I feel? Who would want to be abandoned by their parents twice?" Vincent clenched Shirone's hand tightly, trembling. "It's all your fault. You will never abandon me." After saying that, he embraced his little son tightly. Tears streamed down like a river. "Please forgive this foolish father. You are everything to me." The father and son held each other tightly, expressing their sacred feelings. Everyone around was silent, quietly watching this touching scene. Bishop looked at the scene and suddenly realized, what we do for our children can hurt them deeply. Clum replied, "Being a father and mother is truly difficult." He asked, "Haven't you also struggled a lot raising your child alone?" Bishop's eyes welled up with tears, but he tried to hide them so no one would see him crying. His gaze gently shifted toward Ryan, noticing his son crying bitterly, moved by the profound bond between Vincent and Shirone. Suddenly, Bishop said, "I heard that Ampa's Magic Academy has special consideration criteria. Father can help with that." Clum wondered, what can an old man do? How could he possibly persuade that stubborn Ampas?" Bishop replied, "Why not? I heard he still owes you a favor." Upon hearing that, Clum laughed out loud. For someone as principled as him, isn't being stubborn the best approach? Bishop chuckled as well. I once used that method to force you to become the family head. Clum slightly avoided. It was all for your own good. 3 days later, Ryan arrived at the Swordsmanship Academy. The head of the family allowed the Shirone family to stay in Ojin. Vincent still felt guilty about his son and didn't know when he would ever get over it. Finally, Ryan and Shirone had some free time, and the two slept together. Ryan smiled happily, delighting in looking at the friend lying beside him. Shirone, listening to the stories he told, couldn't help but laugh with satisfaction, even bursting into laughter. But then, 3 days later, they were forced to leave this place to go to the academy, where their dreams awaited. Shirone turned his head back and suddenly heard sobbing. It turned out that Ryan was crying loudly. He worriedly said, "Ryan, don't cry anymore." Ryan replied painfully, "How can I not cry? Once I get on the carriage, I have to go to the Swordsmanship Academy. We really have to say goodbye." The more he spoke, the louder he cried. "Why can't I enroll next year like you?" Shirone reassured him, "It's not even certain that I'll be accepted under special consideration. But we can still meet during the holidays. Remember to write every day." Suddenly, Ryan placed his hand on Shirone's shoulder and said firmly, "Shirone, you must become a mage. I will also become the strongest knight to protect you. I promise you." Before he could finish, Shirone punched him hard on the head, saying, "Just focus on graduating first. I worry about you the most." Then she turned to Shirone. "Don't worry about anything, just enjoy being with your family for now. The master will definitely help you get admitted." Shirone quietly replied, "All right, thank you for your help." He placed his hand over his chest and bowed deeply, expressing his heartfelt gratitude. Shirone smiled, thinking to herself, "What a strange child. At first, I thought he was just a cute boy, but he is also very considerate. And moreover, he can maintain his faith in such a frightening situation." She suddenly looked at him and said, "Shirone may be able to when you graduate," but then she stopped talking and became silent. She thought to herself, "What am I thinking? He is just a child about to live in a completely new environment, the Magic Academy." Then Shirone stepped forward, placed her hand on his shoulder, and said, "No, just do your best. You will definitely become a mage." He replied, "Please take care of Ryan." After that, she pulled Ryan into the carriage and turned to wave goodbye. Shirone got on the carriage on this side, where his parents were sitting, feeling extremely excited and full of anticipation. The horses began to run. The two carriages passed each other, going in opposite directions, and gradually drifted apart. He sat in the carriage, suddenly hearing a loud call coming from outside. Shirone immediately looked out to see who it was. It turned out to be Ryan Ojin, who was shouting towards him, "When you get to the Magic Academy, remember to surpass them." He found that so funny that he burst out laughing. Then Shirone Arian also shouted back loudly in response, "You too." And that was the meeting of two passionate young men, remembered as the beginning of the event that broke the balance of the entire continent. Below the roadside, there was a nest of baby birds. The mother bird just flew back and perched beside them, then took off and flew high, flying over the grand Riang castles with solemn Riang architecture. "This is the Alpheas Magic Academy." A man set a teacup down on the table. That was Clum. He was tired, forced a smile, then said, "You've been thinking for 30 minutes already, so the answer must be yes, right?" Alpheas replied, "Even though we've been good friends for 50 years, I truly cannot accept your proposal." Hearing this, Clum shouted in frustration, "What are you saying? Do you know how hard I struggled when I was young because of you?" Alpheas calmly said, "It seems this matter is quite important for you to utter such empty words. However, the special consideration category is not a backdoor for nobles. Each year, many requests arrive, but this category has its own standards." The more Clum heard, the more unpleasant he felt. His face showed annoyance as he silently cursed the cunning old man for making him wait 30 minutes in vain. Then he laughed. "This time it's different." Alpheas was somewhat surprised. "Indeed, it must be important. It's been a long time since I've seen that expression on you." Clum laughed fiercely and continued, "I never said you should accept a useless person. On the contrary, it's quite the opposite. That boy is my youngest grandson's friend. He's very talented. Do you know what I thought when I met him? I almost felt like I was looking at you when you were young." Alpheas drank a sip of tea, then questioned, "If he's that talented, why doesn't he enroll in the normal way? Surely there must be some problem." Clum said seriously, "There is indeed a big problem. He is not a noble." Alpheas heard that and exclaimed, startled, "Impossible." Then Clum accurately described Shirone's appearance. A child with blonde hair and blue eyes. Clum recalled Shirone's previous words, "Even if I lose my life, I would never regret being friends with you." He commented, "That was my first impression of him." Clum was serious. "He sure talks big. At first, I thought he was just a smart kid who knew how to manipulate adults. However, after I offered to adopt him, he retorted, If you now tell me to deny my origins, that's no different from telling me to find my death. Just remembering that statement made Clum cover his face and burst into laughter. Do you think that makes sense? Who would turn down the chance to become a noble? Alpheas gently stroked his beard. He understands the natural law of cause and effect. Clum nodded, that's right. Without a cause, there can be no effect. However, not everyone understands this law, and many people easily lose themselves. A new opportunity can come at any time, but the moment a person rejects their origins, they lose everything and can no longer decide what they believe is right. Does that remind you of yourself when you were young? Alpheas fell silent. After a long pause, he finally spoke. Their refusal to compromise means others may agree with what they believe is right, but those same others can also judge them. That is what I find dangerous. Hearing this, Clum clicked his tongue, then gently said, "You still can't forgive yourself, can you? You have done everything you could. You have taught many talented people. Isn't it time to forgive yourself?" He laughed. "If I were to forgive myself, that would be too arrogant, my friend." Alpheas looked out the window and confided, "The reason I teach children is to prevent someone like me from appearing again." With a deeply sorrowful expression, he continued, "I'm not even sure myself. If that child really is as you said, then who can guarantee he won't tread the terrible path I once took?" Clum spoke up. "You were once a genius, Alpheas, a once-in-a-century genius. You were considered the light of the Milch family. You only went astray once and nearly lost everything. But then you returned. Who would have thought you'd become the principal of a school in such a remote place?" Alpheas then teased, "Then luck must be on your side. An incompetent kid who becomes a legitimate third-rank swordsman. I worry about the future of the Tomia kingdom." Then the two burst into hearty laughter together. Clum suddenly stood up, walked to the window to gaze at the school. Without a cause, there can be no effect. He poured more tea and said, "Is this fate? Who would have thought you knew that boy? The child who was driven away 4 years ago has now returned." He laughed. "I don't believe in fate." However, Alpheas silently thought of Shirone, a talent buried by class, struggling for 4 years and now standing before him. Could this really be fate? He decisively announced, "I will take Shirone. In the spring 3 years from now." A carriage was approaching the small house deep in the forest. Shirone had finished getting ready from his hair to his clothes, then called out loudly, "Mother, father." Shirone Arian, now 17 years old, smiled excitedly. "I will be home soon, mother." Shirone's mother hugged him tightly, praising him endlessly. "My dear child, I will miss you so much." He promised, "I will write letters regularly." "But does my hair look good? I've never worn it like this, so it feels strange." She replied, "Miss Duna says short hair is currently popular among the nobility. Just act normal." Vincent cleared his throat a few times, a little embarrassed. "Did you forget anything?" Shirone waved his hand. "Father, I'm already 17. He firmly replied, "Hey, if you don't do it, then let me." He let out a shout, and Vincent gently placed a kiss filled with boundless love on his little son's forehead, then softly embraced him, expressing a father's heart. "Shirone, I'm proud of you." He also deeply enjoyed this warm feeling. Afterwards, Shirone asked, "But is it really okay? The head of the family also said he would give you a house." Vincent replied seriously, "Oh my, I really am. I am the only son of a hunter, right? The home of a hunter is the forest and the fields." He was startled, silently thinking, "Is that really so?" The man saw him off at the car and said, "Even though your father refused the subsidies that the own family wanted to provide you, they are still determined to give them to you." Honestly, Shirone thought to himself, "Today is a joyful day in the village because I am about to join the Magic Academy, yet my father hasn't told anyone. Perhaps the reason he declined the invitation to live in the city is to avoid becoming a threat to me." Temmo Ryan was already waiting outside and respectfully said, "Please get in the carriage. We will escort you to the academy." Shirone climbed into the carriage, stuck his head out the window, and shouted loudly, "I'll be back soon." And that is how my first day at the academy began. The carriage moved farther away, leaving behind the couple who saw their child off on the journey to adulthood and the pursuit of dreams. Inside the carriage, it was just Shirone and Temmo Ryan, making the atmosphere awkward. Upon arrival, he took the initiative to open the door and called out to him, "Young master, we have arrived." Temmo Ryan helped Shirone down from the horse, his face showing clear surprise and admiration. He continued, "At Alpheas Witch School, the place is very crowded right now, bustling with activity. The school gates are tall and majestic, looking truly noble." Temmo Ryan spoke up, "The cost of study materials will be covered by me, young master. You just need to focus on your studies." Shirone gratefully said, "Thank you, my escorting steward." He gently bowed his head, expressing his feelings sincerely. "Now I finally have the chance to thank you. I was able to come here because you valued me. I will never forget this kindness." He smiled as he spoke words he had always cherished. Suddenly, a remark startled Scion. No matter how talented a commoner is, they remain just that, a commoner, and can never surpass nobility. Opposite him was the stern, darkened face of Temmo Ryan. But then he continued, saying, however, not everyone is given this opportunity. After you join the school, there will be many nobles who dislike you. He smiled as he offered advice, but you must persevere. If you can endure until the very end, everything will eventually pass. Scion was moved and replied, thank you, sir. I will definitely become a mage. Temmo Ryan nodded. Now, if you are ready, follow me. We need to enroll you. So the two of them went deeper into the academy. He thought quietly, at Anpa's wizard school, known as the Cradle of Geniuses, what will I learn, and who else will I meet? Inside, the guards spoke in unison. We will serve you wholeheartedly. On the school grounds were people coming to fulfill their dreams, just like Sire. After completing the formalities, Temmo Ryan instructed, I'm leaving now. If you need anything, please feel free to contact me. Scion replied, yes, thank you very much. Then he glanced around, thinking, who will come to pick me up? Should I take a tour while I wait? Suddenly, he noticed many long boards posted on the wall. The Anpa's wizarding school operates based on a system of 10 ranks, with a total of 420 students. Among them, 30 are in the graduating class. Each year, the number of graduates is. Scion was startled, his eyes wide open, only a few dozen. Suddenly, someone spoke up, so you are Scion. Hearing that, he immediately turned his head and bowed respectfully. Hello, Principal. Anpa's chuckled, we've met before, do you remember me? He replied, thank you very much for that time. The old man gently patted his back and said, it's all right. We can talk slowly as we walk. Anpa's announced, you will need to take an entrance exam. Scion was shocked. I haven't reviewed anything at all. How could I possibly know anything for the test? The old man reassured him, don't worry, it's just some simple tests to place you in the right class. Temmo Ryan asked, can you penetrate the spirit realm? He answered, yes, sir. Hearing this, Anpas was very impressed. Oh, that's really remarkable. He thought inwardly, who would have guessed he could open the spirit realm on his own? If I had started teaching the boy when he was younger, it would have been great. Though it's late, I need to teach him the basics first. The entrance examination hall will be filled with 10-year-old children. If he arrives early, this boy will be really embarrassed. So the old man made a suggestion. Do you want to take a walk around the school? The two of them entered another area. A young boy was reading with 3 books floating around him. As they passed by, Scion noticed something unusual. He stammered, The Principal Anpas introduced. This is the classroom where students study. He looked up amazed. It's the freshman class from Group 18. This is the introductory class. Class 18 has many kids flying around above and using magic. Scion was still standing there in a daze, watching those kids happily passing books and playing together. Some of them even gathered to play games and snack. Scion excitedly looked around and exclaimed, everyone is using magic. Anpas nodded. That's right, but the place we need to go to is a bit different. They continued on to the advanced class, Group 74. This place was very quiet. Everyone was seriously studying and not joking around. Scion silently noted the different atmosphere, because everyone around was about the same age. They were fervently discussing something. A young man with black hair spoke up. A large amount of magical power can lower the air pressure. Wouldn't freezing condensation work better? Although the drawback is that the reaction occurs faster. How about this, adjusting the timing instead of the magical power? Scion was startled as if wanting to scream. What is that? He was shaken by a painful realization. Why couldn't he understand what they were saying, even though they used the same language? Suddenly, a loud explosion sounded from behind. A girl stepped out from the smoke, coughing repeatedly. When she saw Anpas, she quickly bowed and said, Ah, hello, Principal. The old man smiled. All right, it seems there are a few issues. The red-haired girl wearing glasses replied, Yes, sir, I was experimenting with some things to amplify sound, but the results were faulty. Scion wondered silently, do they not care about it at all? Anpas commented, It seems there is an imbalance between the input and output. Check if the electric current is balanced. She eagerly gave a thumbs up. Thank you, Principal, I will try again. Scion was extremely surprised. The principal didn't stop her, and she intended to try once more. He looked around in bewilderment, feeling as if he were in a different world. The two continued their tour. A girl with long red hair swept past, graceful and stunningly beautiful, captivating the boys nearby. That was Ami. They then proceeded to another room, where something caught Scion's attention. He looked, is this a bulletin board? On the wall was a yellow board, full of writing. He glanced at it and thought, this lists the rankings of the entire intermediate class. At the top was Kami's. Is she a top-tier noble? More precisely, Ami Kami's. He stood there stunned, his face blank, unable to believe it. All the people named here are talents like me, but she stands at the top. A sudden desire sprouts in my heart. I want to be like that too. I will start learning again right here. His eyes flashed with hope for the future, urging him to improve his rank. Suddenly a voice called from behind. Hey, Ami, wait for me. That voice made Siren curiously turn around. He silently thought, could this Ami be Ami Kami's, the top student in the intermediate class? Suddenly, he froze when he saw that red-haired girl. Her face reminded him of a frightening dark past, when some thugs grabbed his shirt and beat him up. And the leader was Ami herself. At that time, she was like a little crazy demon, pointing straight at his face and questioning, where did you learn magic? Why does a commoner know magic? Back to the present, Ami just brushed past him without a word, but unexpectedly, she glanced in Siren's direction. He immediately turned his face away. An orange-haired girl ran up from behind, calling out loudly, Ami, I told you to wait and go together, you idiot. Siren lowered his head, silently praying, please don't see me, please. Then the two girls passed by. Cyril looked back with interest and said, did you see that guy we just passed? He looks really handsome. She added, is he a new student? But he doesn't look quite right. Maybe a transfer student. Ami replied, that's quite interesting. It seems like I have met him before. Cyril suddenly exclaimed loudly, what, you're interested in him too? But you're not into guys, right? She objected, no, that's not what I meant. I just find him very familiar. Hearing this, Cyril giggled and shouted, don't lie, you've already fallen for him, haven't you? Ami firmly refused, no, I never said that. She is Ami Kami's, a top intermediate student, the most famous girl. She has turned down many confessions from seniors, juniors, and classmates alike. She is the exemplary student among exemplary students. But the only person who knows about her dark past is trying to get accepted into this academy. Alpheas inquired, are you cold? Siren trembled and replied, no, sir. The third testing location of the Magic Academy is a solidly built, majestic building. The two of them entered inside. Alpheas spoke, oh dear, it seems it's not over yet. The old man leaned toward Siren and said, that's good, take a close look at what that child is doing. Above are the judges. Standing at the center of 3 circles filled with magical characters is a brown-haired child. Alpheas briefed Siren, when you enter the spirit realm, you will see the characters on the wall appear differently. How you perceive them will help us understand the size, power, flexibility, and tendencies of the spirit realm. The old man continued, so you just need to answer the professor's questions honestly. He replied, yes, sir. Excitement surged in Siren's heart. How interesting. Letter 1 EFT, the person sitting above, called out, so, Kami, can you use magic? The child replied, yes, sir. The boy began to demonstrate his ability. I can levitate objects. The man praised, ah, how cute. Very good, now try entering the spirit realm. Kami answered, yes, sir. The boy closed his eyes and then announced, I've entered. Letter 1 EFT quietly asked, which number is the farthest? The boy replied, 6, sir. A professor smiled and asked again, 6. Alpheas explained, number 6 means the diameter of the spirit realm is 6 meters. Siren immediately absorbed more knowledge. A brown-haired man asked next, which color do you see as the strongest? Kami answered, red, sir. I feel like I'm entering a red world. The man immediately recorded, divergence type like light and fire. That indicates this child tends to be very active. Alpheas explained again, divergence type means his spirit realm is much stronger than his age. A female professor asked, do you see the giant tower? Kami replied, it's on my left. Then Sienna asked, how do you feel about the temperature? The boy answered, it's a bit hot, I'm sweating already. When finished, she said, very well done, Kami. Praised, the child happily ran away. Sienna exclaimed, this year's freshman class is really impressive. Letter 1 EFT laughed as he said, that's right, the student's spirit realm size is 12 meters. It seems the quality of students has been improving year by year. Finally, they wrote a comment line, overall evaluation. Good use of the spirit realm, but endurance is somewhat lacking. Then they called the next name, Siren Arian. Alpheas draped his arm around him, smiled, and said, show them your skills. He smiled and replied, yes, I will do my best. Letter 1 EAFT rubbed his chin and thought silently. So this child is the one who went through the special test that the principal mentioned. Sienna also thought to herself, quite an unusual choice, but he's also fairly old, borrowing the noble title to be listed. Isn't that family very famous? The documents list Siren Arian, age 17, as a noble guest. Perhaps they discovered his talent a bit late. Sienna looked at him and marveled inwardly. His appearance is truly unique, but here at this school he'll soon be buried. Letter 1 EAFT spoke up. Scion Aryan, can you use magic? He replied. No, I have never learned before. The man raised his eyebrows. Is that so? But even if you haven't learned, you should be able to do a few things. Anpas frowned slightly, thinking, that's what they would think. Magic is an act that brings knowledge into the mind. Noble children are taught many things, so they can naturally use magic. But this child has no knowledge at all. That tightened up and said, all right. Now step into the circle and proceed to your spirit realm. He asked, can you enter the spirit realm? Scion hesitated and answered, I'll try. He breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it doesn't seem to be a serious case of domestic abuse. He gradually entered his own spirit realm. Around him, a blue light appeared. A beam of light descended from above onto his head. The surrounding characters began to move and hover. Scion opened his eyes and was amazed by the scene. So that's how it is. That spoke up, asking the familiar questions. Now, Scion, tell us the farthest number. He froze, not responding. The man called out once more, Scion. The brown-haired woman smiled. It seems he is embarrassed. Anpas, standing outside, said, Scion, please answer quickly. We won't categorize you, we're just trying to find the best way to educate you. He still hesitated, then explained, I see a number, but it's so long that I can't read it. That looked puzzled, you can't read it. It's not based on sight, but on your perception. Scion clarified, no, that's not what I mean. I can sense it, but it's too long. Even now it keeps getting longer. He sighed deeply, thinking, really? Then he frowned and said, then let's start with the first numbers you can see. Scion focused, slowly looking at the results in the spirit realm. It stretched endlessly. He looked at the number 3.415 followed by a long string behind it. He summarized and replied, 3.14. Letter 1 EAFD was startled. What? Sienna was extremely alarmed. Scion, we did not put the number 3.14 in there. Are you sure you're not mistaken? He frowned and responded, is that so? But that's what I see. She thought to herself, really? Of course, there will be some cases where the ratio pi appears. That means the region's size has exceeded the range we set. Could he really see as far as 30 meters? The brown-haired woman asked, so what color do you see the strongest? Scion looked around and replied, blue, completely blue. Once again, the professors looked at each other in surprise. If it really is blue, isn't that the convergent type? But his spirit realm is that large. The convergent type emphasizes durability over size, unlike the divergent type. Anpas, standing outside, was also stunned. He now understood why he had been so adamant. But this was no longer just a good talent. He opened his eyes wide, sweat dripping down his forehead. They recorded in his file the two words, convergent. Then they added both hemispheres. The old professor asked, how many numbers are floating around? Scion looked up into his own spirit realm and thought silently. Is he asking about this? No need to count each one individually. I can just feel it. Inside this place, there are many brightly shining dots. He decisively answered, 867 spots. The old professor was stunned upon hearing this. His face frozen, his mouth stammering, 867. Then tremblingly wrote it down on the paper. Density, 86.7%. Anpas remained silent outside, but suddenly his face clearly showed seriousness. He quietly thought, this is dangerous. Sienna gently pushed her glasses up, her eyes showing some caution. But she quickly regained her composure to continue the examination. Scion, how cold are you feeling right now? He replied, quite cold, to the point of numbness all over. She was not surprised and immediately wrote on the paper, as predicted. Then Sienna wrote in the overall assessment, convergent, defensive with exceptional durability. Unusually large spiritual domain size. The brown-haired woman smiled in praise. Very good. Now we need to sort classes to decide where you all will go. So all new students please wait outside. Scion obeyed, turned around with the other children, and moved out. He took the lead, slowly pushing the door open and stepping out, then waited until everyone had left before closing the door. As soon as the door closed, the room instantly buzzed with chatter. An interesting student. Exactly how can a 17-year-old teenager possess a spiritual domain with a diameter over 300? The spiritual domain increases in density along with size, yet his density is as high as 86.7%. The old professor continued. Above all, it was pure concentration, with no use of any enhancement skills. Is that kid some kind of monk training non-stop on a mountain? Suddenly, a comment from that made everyone stop discussing. Could it be that he's lying? He smiled mockingly. Think about it, a spirit realm density of 90 pH with a diameter of 30 meters coming from a 17-year-old teenager who has no idea what magic is. It's a bit absurd. Is it possible he boosted the numbers before telling us? Sienna frowned and replied, Sir, that have you forgotten? There's no reason for a new student to lie. If they got into an advanced class that way, they wouldn't be able to keep up with the rest. Not to mention taking tests. Would a student just make up something like that upon arrival? She continued, Moreover, it seems some here have forgotten that pi was displayed as an error code. Shirone is now sitting awkwardly among the children. That's not something an ordinary student could fabricate just to attract attention. That was angry and clicked his tongue. Alpheas stepped forward and asked, So which class should we put him in? I mean Shirone. Sienna stood up and said, Principal, Class B studies the development of the spirit realm and its theories. Meanwhile, Class 5 begins learning actual magic. I think this student's spirit realm is almost complete, so I suggest putting him in Class 5. The man behind decisively said, I object. This made Sienna angry. That letter 1 EAFD, a 6th-level mage, spoke up. He's a 17-year-old teenager who knows nothing about magic. This could cause trouble and make him arrogant if he's placed in an advanced class. I think he should be taught from the basics. Sienna bluntly replied, That may be true, but not every student is like him, Mr. letter 1 EAFD. He angrily shouted, Honestly, you just want to put him in Class 5 because you manage that class and you want to have that student, don't you? Sienna responded, What's wrong with wanting to teach such a talented student? A brown-haired professor interjected, Mr. letter 1 EAFD is right as well. Even with outstanding talent, he's still a young student. So why don't we teach him step by step starting from grade 10? The old professor beside him wearily said, In the end, these two are back to their old ways again. A brown-haired woman said gently, But if he's sent to the basic class with an unsuitable age, he will lose motivation. What does everyone think about postponing the placement, then observing him first? The old professor spoke up. I think Class B would be appropriate. Class B is an advanced class, but also includes fundamental lessons about the spirit realm. If that child is that talented, skipping a grade is also a good option. Alpheas rubbed his chin and replied, As expected, what you say makes a lot of sense. He no longer hesitated and decided. Shirone will be assigned to Class B. The Magic Academy has a system of 10 classes. Based on assessments, students are placed into different classes from level 10 to level 1. The classes are divided into 3 groups. Grades 10 to 8 are elementary levels, focusing on developing the spirit domain. Grades 7 to B are advanced levels, learning how to use magic and the spirit domain. Finally, there is the graduation class from 3 to 1, where strict training is conducted to cultivate professional mages. The next morning at Alpheas Academy, a newly arrived young man bore the Class B insignia on his chest. He attracted the attention of many eyes, especially female students. Shirone slowly stepped into the classroom, carrying his school bag under a crowd of curious glances. The teacher announced, Today our class has a new student. The girls kept chatting nonstop. He was placed in the intermediate class right upon enrollment. He seems older, but he's so handsome. He stood on the podium, flashing a radiant smile, and introduced himself. I am Arian Shirone, pleased to meet you. The whole class immediately buzzed like New Year's, filled with applause and cheerful chatter everywhere. Most of the girls warmly welcomed Shirone, and the teacher had to ask for silence. Shirone felt extremely excited because his wish finally had a chance to come true. He had arrived at the Magic Academy. Alpheas Magic Academy occupies the entire 75.45 square kilometers of mountain area, including the dormitories. It owns 33 buildings and 40 training centers. Although going outside is prohibited on non-weekend days, this poses no inconvenience, as most facilities are located within the school. Classes end at 5 o'clock. Any time after that is free time, but students often go to the library, which is open 24 hours, to satisfy their desire to learn and to connect with other students who share the same interests. All of this has created a prestigious environment. Shirone thought quietly. Just as expected, the classes are very difficult. There are many subjects, all advanced knowledge, originally intended for nobles, those who have studied from a young age and undergone long periods of rigorous training. Therefore, he encountered quite a few difficulties. However, by any means possible, Shirone was determined to keep up with the knowledge. The knowledge, arranged in chronological order of history, was deeply engraved in him. All the world's knowledge was gradually accumulated. One beautiful morning, the teacher announced, Now the class will end here. Well done, everyone. As Shirone closed his book, he pondered. The afternoon session is the Spirit Realm Combat class, but the schedule didn't specify an address. Looking around the classroom, he felt a little embarrassed and didn't know whom to ask. Fortunately, there were a few people around his age. Siren stepped forward quietly and asked, "Hello, do you know which training house we need to go to?" Mario was startled by the question. "You're asking me?" He thought to himself. She seems shy. It's no wonder that I feel more at ease. She replied, "You probably don't know today's practical class is at the #2 Comprehensive Training Center." Siren asked, "Comprehensive? Comprehensive of what?" Mario explained, "All the intermediate classes will train together for 2 weeks. The orientation session is today." Hearing that, Siren hesitated a little. Combined intermediate classes. That means moving to the second central training area. At that moment, many students entered inside, where it was noisy with voices laughing and cheerfully greeting. "Hello, senior. Thank you for last time. Hello, senior. Please come sit here." They all greeted in unison. "Hello, senior Ami." It turned out to be lively because of Ami. Cyril beside her also enjoyed it a bit, waving back. Siren, sitting above looking down, silently thought, "She's really famous. She's someone I definitely don't want to interact with if I can avoid it. But with 2 combined training sessions each week, sooner or later we'll meet." Even so, if she's been in the intermediate class from the start, she will definitely move up to the graduation class soon. While seniors and juniors chatted lively, strict rules still remained. Siren worried, wondering, "Can I remain invisible here?" At that moment, the special teacher of the intermediate class, Et Ramit, a 6th-level sorcerer, appeared and said loudly, "Hello, everyone in the intermediate class. I am E, and I will be responsible for your spirit realm class this year." She looked around once more and continued, "Surely there are students transferred from the beginning of this new year, right? Although our class is full of famous faces, we have a new face joining the intermediate class today." Because of that sentence, everyone looked towards Siren. Is the rumor true? Who is he? He forced a smile, thinking, wait, this is too dangerous. Et Ramit continued, "Siren, will you stand up and greet everyone?" He froze but still tried to comply. Swallowing hard, gathering his courage, Siren stood up. At that moment, Ami and Cyril also looked towards him. Siren smiled and introduced himself. "Hello, I am Aryan Siren. I just started studying in Class B. Pleased to meet you all." Before he could finish his sentence, the whole room burst into applause to welcome him. Siren stood frozen, feeling like he was about to faint. I don't know what to say anymore." Cyril excitedly said to Ami, "Is that the guy you saw yesterday? It seems his name is Siren." Ami appeared uninterested, thinking silently, "This is the first time I've heard his name. Who is he? He seems famous. I should have known him." Suddenly, a brown-haired girl spoke up. "Senior, do you know him? According to what I've heard, the teachers are all paying close attention to him." Cyril exclaimed, "Really?" The girl explained, "They said all his scores were outstanding during the entrance exam." Cyril replied, "Wow, that makes me like him even more. I wonder which wealthy family he comes from." That casual question made Ami pause. Her eyes blazed brightly, shining intensely, and her hair flew wildly. She seemed to recall a memory from the past, when she and a few others were caught in a whirlwind. At that time, she looked directly at a boy outside and questioned him. "Where did you learn magic? How could an ordinary citizen?" And the boy crying loudly outside was none other than Siren. Back in reality, Ami trembled, sweat pouring down, forcing a bitter smile. Damn it. The Kami's family was famous for its line of geniuses. Their red eyes were unique, passed down to every descendant of the clan, allowing the bearer to recall every moment they had ever seen with perfect accuracy. An arrow was shot, precisely hitting the bullseye. Another arrow flew in, splitting the arrow lodged in the bullseye in half. This made all the studying feel meaningless. The shooter was a red-haired girl. Although she hit the bullseye several times, she showed no joy. On the contrary, the butler standing beside her kept applauding and praising, "Wonderful, miss." That red-haired girl was the youngest daughter of the Kami's family, Ami, also the most talented among her siblings. Ami's father laughed heartily. "My daughter." He placed a chess piece down and continued, "Truly a successor of the Kami's house." Ami silently stared at the chessboard in front of her. The butler called out, "Miss." Ami's father asked, "What's the matter, Ami?" Ami's face grew cold as she stood up, clearly bored. She turned away irritably, followed by a group of thugs. In her heart, Ami seethed, "I hate everything. Family, family, family. What does my ability have to do with this family? I can make it on my own without needing this family's name." She went off with the thugs to fight battles everywhere. Ami thought to herself, "I can do whatever I want." Watching the thugs fight, Ami sat with her legs crossed, bored. "This is so boring." "Yet you," made Ami feel surprised and reconsider everything. Ami stared in astonishment at the thugs collapsing around her, while a little boy stood opposite. That boy was crying, tears streaming down his face. The one who changed Ami's mind was a boy from the lowest class. Damn it! In the lecture hall, Siren was bowing his head to greet everyone. Ami looked at the scene before her, the corner of her mouth twitching as she blurted out, damn it. Suddenly Cyril called out. Ami, the brown-haired girl nearby stammered, Sen Senior. Both were confused. Ami was startled and quickly explained, I mean my shoes are a bit uncomfortable. In her mind, Ami thought, I knew it, memories seen through red eyes could never be wrong. Yet Ami remained focused on her thoughts. I thought he was a noble. Who would have guessed he was actually a commoner? How did he get into this academy? The person next to her then asked. What exactly are we talking about? Yet Ami remained focused on her thoughts. I thought he was a noble. Who would have guessed he was actually a commoner? How did he get into this academy? Ami's body trembled. For her that past was extremely embarrassing. Ami slapped her forehead, wishing she could die. Her eyes blurred. I had already erased all clues about that immature phase. There's no way he could still remember that day, right? Ami recalled a memory from 5 years ago, when she squatted in front of a blonde-haired boy, his face blurred with tears. Ami covered her mouth, mocking. A slave doesn't have nails, right? Why don't we just cut them off? A little later, she stood behind, blushing, covering her mouth, watching the thugs force that boy to take off his clothes. Take off? Take off his clothes? What are they doing? Ami imagined Siren mentioning her to others. Senior Ami, she isn't what people think. 5 years ago, she used to hang out with thugs in those small alleys. Why would someone trusted by professors like me lie? Is that all? No, there's more. In her imagination, Siren whispered to everyone, actually, she's very interested in men. Listen, she once tried to strip me completely. Ami was so angry, she accidentally tore the page of the book in front of her. She clenched her fist. No, never, absolutely must not let that happen. The rumor has to be killed in the cradle. On this side, Siren shivered continuously. Someone is watching me, heavens. Intermediate level spiritual domain professor with level 6 mage certification, Romy Etla, stood at the podium. Now then, everyone, what exactly is the spiritual domain? Someone answered, it is the mental state of a mage. She nodded, correct. It is the awareness of a mage's mental state. Its initial formation is only a sphere because that is the most easily focused shape. The blue of the spiritual domain reflected in Etla's eyes. Then she continued, through practical training, we can perceive and transform it as we wish. Etla opened her spiritual domain. She would show them the image field. Siren gaped in amazement. All right. Siren keenly observed the blue image field before her, which she could see with her own eyes. The range of the image field, 10 meters. Etla introduced, this is the basic shape of a spiritual domain, a sphere. But as I said, in practice, the spherical form is rarely used. She snapped her fingers. Let me give you an example. A target board appeared, hovering in midair. Etla said, I will use magic to aim at the target. Etla stood in the center of her spiritual domain. The domain has a range of 10 meters, but the target is 20 meters away. She continued, I will use fireball, a fire element magic. Siren excitedly covered her mouth. Finally, I can see someone use magic. A small fireball appeared on Etla's fingertip. She said, first, I will create a small flame. Etla controlled the fireball, then said, let's see if I can hit the target accurately. The fireball immediately flew straight towards the target. However, as it reached the boundary of the spiritual domain, the flame suddenly extinguished. Below, all the students had wide-open eyes and mouths agape. The flame disappeared. Etla smiled and explained, as you have seen, most magic cannot leave the spiritual domain. Therefore, magic can only maintain its form within the domain. Etla slightly bowed, extending her hand. However, if we expand the spiritual domain, the spherical spiritual field immediately transformed into a straight line. She continued, straight to the target like this. Etla's small flame instantly annihilated the target. She said to the students, see, I can touch it. She said to the students, see, I can touch it. Exclamations of surprise echoed throughout the lecture hall. The older students quietly chatted. Look at those surprised faces of the 7th graders, so cute. Siren and his classmates applauded loudly for the spectacular demonstration. He thought, I didn't expect to be able to do that. Is it really possible to change the shape of the spiritual field? Then Etla continued, but this method has a weakness. Some students showed slight disappointment. A male student asked, isn't that the correct way? Etla opened the adjacent projector screen and pointed. Changing the shape of the spiritual field requires a lot of concentration. In real combat, when opponents can attack in various ways, constantly changing shapes is not the right choice. Etla pointed at the blue screen displaying information about the spiritual field and introduced. Therefore, people have divided the shapes of the spiritual field into 4 main types: defensive, offensive, target, and redirecting forms. These are the four main forms of the spiritual field. Etla continued, let's start with the defensive form. The defensive form is an octagonal shape that allows the spirit domain to withstand most attacks. Etla's spirit domain immediately transformed into an octagon, enveloping her inside. She explained, the more faces in contact, the higher the defensive efficiency. Etla waved her hand again, changing the spirit domain's shape. Next is the star form, also called the offensive form. With this shape, the user can easily locate targets. The brightest point indicates the direction toward the most targets. Etla's spirit domain shifted once more. She continued the lecture. Next is the target form, extremely effective in long-range combat. However, it is ineffective against fast-moving targets. In theory, yes, but in practice, the distance between the points and the center is quite large, making it difficult to rotate. Etla spoke evenly. The important factor when using this form is speed. You can rotate its shape. The students whispered among themselves. She can even use that technique without blinking. Professor, do you think we can do that? Meanwhile, Shirone was deep in thought. With this method, the spirit domain can be used within a 10-meter range in actual combat. Etla continued, and finally the redirection form. It's not very popular because even fifth-year students struggle to master it. But she will give you an example. Just then, a student behind Shirone spoke up. If we can do it, that means we can advance to higher classes, right? Back in 8th grade, I got a perfect score in this spirit realm subject. Easy as pie. Before the girl could finish speaking, the transformation below silenced everyone. Several students stood with their mouths agape in amazement. Shirone was startled as well. The boisterous students exclaimed, the spirit realm below. The blue sphere was gradually separating from the professor's body. Shirone was so agitated he wanted to stand up. I don't understand. The spirit realm is the mage's mental state. How can it separate from the body? Etla's spirit realm slowly transformed into a flowing stream. Shirone curiously wondered, I wonder what's inside it. At the center of that spirit realm, Etla stood below, surrounded by spirit realm streams that had taken form. She said, the redirection form is extremely difficult to use, to the point that even experienced mages struggle. But its strength lies in that the mage is not the center of the spirit realm, so there is no movement limitation. Therefore, targeting with instantaneous spells is no longer theoretical, since its operational range is limitless. Instantaneous spells mean the mage places the spell inside the redirection form, and it activates automatically upon reaching the target. Hearing Etla, the students exclaimed in surprise and murmured, how can the professor do that? She's calm as if just breathing. Just entering the spirit realm is already difficult. A girl sitting behind Shirone replied, she's on a totally different level. A 6th-level mage, and yet. Shirone gazed blankly, his gentle expression hiding an extraordinary talent. Etla adjusted her glasses. You'll be disappointed if we skip practical exercises in the very first lesson, won't you? The person who ranked first in the quick magic test, target type, Etla called out. Ami Camis, class 4, where are you? Let's start with the student representative. The girl sitting next to Cyril cheered. You're amazing, always number 1 in the class. Cyril turned to smile at Ami. Again, Ami, truly a star. The boys already adore you the moment they see you. But when she turned back, she saw Ami's stunned face, her spirit seemingly gone to the clouds. Cyril stammered. I was still talking, was I? Ami was sweating profusely. In her heart, she thought, I really don't want to be the center of attention right now. The first type among the 4 spirit domains, the target type, holds the advantage of a long attack range. However, it is disadvantaged when facing fast-moving targets and multiple enemies. But if used by someone with exceptional focus, controlling the spirit domain at high speed. Boom, boom, 2 successive explosions sounded. Ami turned quickly, launching several fireballs toward the targets. Then that weakness will completely disappear, and it will become an impregnable fortress against distant enemies. The students in their seats admired and exclaimed, as expected of Senior Ami, she's incredible. Usually, participants in rapid shooting competitions switch among 4 forms, but Senior Ami always ranks first, even though she only uses the target form. A classmate sitting in the same row as Shirone murmured, I wonder if I could ever become a mage like her. Shirone stared blankly, thinking, even an amateur like me can see she's amazing. He couldn't take his eyes off Ami's performance. The fireballs continuously shattered the targets. Not only did she constantly rotate the spirit domain while standing still, but she could also attack every target that the spirit domain swept over. Ami was like a ruler of the arena, even in another dimension. Shirone marveled. Her face showed no expression, yet every gesture exuded elegance and nobility. Applause erupted. Wonderful. The student behind Shirone said, If I could date a senior like her, my school life would be completely different. His friend next to him scoffed. Dream on, she doesn't care about anyone. Don't forget the Cammy's family. Siren overheard them talking, thinking to himself, I can understand why the boys go crazy over her. She's not only high nobility but also lacks for nothing. He shifted his gaze down to Ami below. Someone so perfect. Then why did she once roam around with those street thugs? Below, Ami finished her demonstration, bowed, and used quick magic to finish. Achievement, level 9. Time, 205. A loud round of applause erupted all around. Ami was stunned, then suddenly lifted her head, using her blue eyes to stare intently in one direction. Siren felt a shock as soon as he caught that gaze. The students around began to discuss. What's that? Senior Ami, no way, someone loudly said. She just looked at the new student right. Ami was awakened by the shouting, immediately turning back to her seat. She gritted her teeth. Damn it, why was I looking at that brat for no reason? Ami felt restless and uncomfortable, but at least she confirmed one thing. People around were whispering, do those two know each other? That can't be, he just enrolled today. Siren turned pale, thinking, I understand now. Not just me, now Ami shares the same thought as I do. Ami thinks he remembers her, and Siren also realizes that she misses him. Ami pondered, if he spreads rumors about my past, it would cause serious trouble. Indeed, I have to silence him, right? After thinking for a moment, she shook her head. No, I must stay calm. I am the top student in the school. How could I easily believe random words from someone like that? Being careless will only make things worse. Cyril ran up to ask, Ami, what happened in the image realm? Your face is all red. Ami quickly shook her head, rubbing her face. No, it's nothing. After that, the practical session was divided according to each class. The students moved down below. Etla said, Class B will start with the defensive stance. To begin, you must master the defensive stance first. She walked around explaining to the students. Mages need to maintain concentration in order to survive on the battlefield. Siren stood alone, closing his eyes to focus, thinking of a trick, imagining himself shrinking and condensing his consciousness inside his head. He sketched out a spirit realm belonging only to himself. First, condensing the spirit realm and forming a solid mass. Then he built a frame to prevent it from collapsing. When Siren thought he had succeeded, he suddenly startled. He looked at the image realm in front of him. Not yet, until it's realized he can't be sure. It would be easier if he could see the spirit realm within the image realm. Siren went over to Etla and asked, Excuse me, may I use the image realm? She was surprised. The image realm? Etla looked around and replied, Actually, only the upperclassmen get to use it first. Siren also followed her gaze, silently thinking, there's no need to pay attention to others when learning magic. The opportunity for someone to truly progress doesn't come often. Etla turned back and smiled. It seems no one is using it, then go ahead. She thought to herself, could letting a new student demonstrate be a bit too much? The crowd around him made noise. A new student? Nice, so cute. Cyril nudged Ami. Ami, look. Cyril's next sentence made Ami choke on her drink. That student just entered the image realm. Ami turned back, shouting loudly, startling Cyril. What the heck is he doing? What could a 7th grader possibly do? Everyone's attention focused on the field. Siren was standing alone in the middle, and on the board appeared the words, Field range 0 meters. Siren stared straight ahead. Finally, I've found it. A blue sphere enveloped Siren. He saw it with his own eyes. My spiritual field. The surrounding students immediately gasped. Wah, what is that size? The field's range on the measuring board kept changing. Siren looked up, thinking, did they tell me about the size of the spiritual field during the entrance exam? If the teacher heard that, he would definitely reply, no, we couldn't even measure it. Siren raised both hands high. Then how much bigger can it get? Watching the spiritual field grow larger and larger, Siren panicked internally and screamed. Stop! The measuring board displayed, field range 20 meters. The 5th graders stammered in amazement. Hey, is he really from Class B? Isn't the average for 7th grade only 13 meters? The chatter was non-stop. Are you sure he's not purposely making a mistake? If that were the case, the density would decrease, almost like a flying balloon. Siren was sweating profusely. Stop it now. Thank goodness, too much attention already. Time to switch to defensive mode. As he was preparing to switch the spiritual field mode, Siren suddenly froze. What is this? He looked at the spiritual field before him. The frame isn't lifting up, it's collapsing. Why? But everything was fine during practice just now. Ami stood in the 4th grade area, eyes wide open. There's no way it would succeed on the very first practice session, right? Siren was wondering, where exactly did I go wrong? Am I scared just because I saw it with my own eyes? No, my ability to concentrate can't be affected by something like that. He focused his thoughts. I need to find the reason. So what's the difference between the outside and inside of the realm? Something flashed in his mind, like a drop of water, disturbing a calm lake. Siren's eyes widened. I get it now. He recalled that earlier when Etla stood inside the realm. He had mistaken it because the professor's demonstration was too relaxed. If you want to change the spirit realm, it requires concentration. So, his intention to shrink his spirit realm had already used up that concentration. Siren took a deep breath and gathered his spirit. He said, then I just need to keep it at a normal size. As soon as he finished speaking, the range of his spirit realm began to expand relentlessly. The students around gaped. Wow, what? It's even bigger now. Siren's spirit realm grew larger and larger. His gaze was filled with determination. The number on the spirit realm range meter kept rising. Ami's mouth twitched as she watched the scene. What the hell? The entire hall was almost engulfed in a green hue. All the students standing around had to look up, mouths wide open. The number on the realm meter had reached 41 meters. The whole hall shouted, too big. Looking at the spirit realm before him, someone panicked and screamed out loud. What the hell is this? What kind of spirit field is this that it's so large? Siren raised both hands high, concentrating his thoughts. Now there's no need to do each side separately. He looked at his own hands. I will shrink everything all at once. Siren's spirit field immediately shrank, rising up into solid planes. The senior students exclaimed, that new student, truly. They watched Siren standing inside his spirit field. The entire auditorium broke into a stir. It worked, and it's only the first day. Even Siren himself was surprised by his own spirit field. He reached out to touch it. It felt as if he was inside a gemstone. Etla, standing nearby, was also amazed, adjusting her glasses and thinking to herself. Although the superior convergence characteristics of this defensive form surely helped him, succeeding on the very first day is truly incredible. I heard he even astonished the teachers during the entrance exam. Cyril turned to Ami and said, it seems the rumor that he caught the attention of all the teachers is true. What do you think, Ami? Ami's expression at that moment was terrifying enough to alarm even Cyril. In Ami's mind, thoughts about past matters related to Siren kept circling endlessly. That kid is the root of my humiliation. He could come all the way here. It seems someone must be backing him.